This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
See if they take a shot here. Howard looking to launch. Right down the middle. Smith is wide open. Too easy.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Let's look here. Quinn Ewers trying to audible.
To stay alive. Can they hook him? Touchdown, Matthew Golden.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Jaden Harrison bringing back the kickoff. He brought two back for touchdowns last year when he played for the Thundering Herd of Marshall, and he has one for Notre Dame.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Golden with a chance as a return man to set up Texas in good field position as he returns it from the 25. And he breaks through. Look at Silas Bolden. Goodbye.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Remember when the idea was the college football playoff would be expanded, and we didn't know really if it was going to be 6 or 8 or 12 or whatever it is, and of course there's always discussion about what to do. But the first ever truly expanded playoff, other than when they went from 2 to 4, the truly first large bracket, 12 teams down to 4, semifinal tonight, Penn State, Notre Dame. Tomorrow, Ohio State, Texas. We'll hear a couple of comments in just a moment from Steve Sarkisian and also Ryan Day. But tonight is the first of the semifinals, and also a big story involving a quarterback that's entered the portal that a lot of people thought was going to enter and go to the NFL. Paul and Craig, your thoughts? Notre Dame and Penn State. I'm glad it's here. I look forward to getting home just in time. Turn it on and watch what I hope is a classic.
I can't wait. It's going to be an old school game. I think that, they haven't played since 2007. These two that before that, when they stopped being major independents, or one of them stopped being a major independent, they quit the kind of yearly rivalry. They'd played what you told me 12 years in a row.
Yeah, it was just something like that. Yeah,
and so in the 90s, but yeah, I think this is going to be a great game. I'm a big Riley Leonard guy. I'm excited to see him tonight. I really do like Drew Aller as well. So good quarterback matchup, good defense matchup, good running back matchup. I mean, there's not. If you were, they do those things on the websites of like who has the advantage. I would say all the way down the line. If somebody's got a check in the other corner, it's not that much. It's a very even matchup.
Yeah, I mean, the first time they played in quite a long time, 18 total matchups between the two, haven't played since 2007, and then played in 2006 in a little back and forth home and home there. Saw a little coaching matchup of Charlie Weiss versus Joe Paterno.
How about that?
It's the last time that these two teams have played, and that's the only time those two teams have played those two games since 92. So it's been, you would think they'd have interacted a bit more than they have, but it's been a really long time since they played, but a really long time since this was any kind of consistent like it was in the 90s. So, yeah, a fresh matchup. And I don't know, I think we got like the perfect weather outside for this game. It's nasty, icy, rainy, windy, cold, and that's what I think of when I think of like the brand of football when you put these two teams together. Now, it won't be that in Miami, obviously.
Right.
But, I mean, it feels like Big Ten football weather outside in a way. So it's kind of like getting me ready for tonight's game.
I wish it was on a grass field.
I'm going to sit outside my house because I can see if you open the blinds. I can see my television. I can tilt it out. I'm going to stand outside with a raincoat on and try to experience it as Craig intends there.
Yeah, it does feel like we should be in like South Bend tonight, like watching this game.
Absolutely.
But I don't know what it's like everywhere else. Obviously, it's craziness all over the country, but it definitely feels like a Big Ten football game tonight. And Notre Dame's obviously in Indy, but if they leaned away, it would be, you would think, towards the Big Ten. But, yeah, this is two big-time programs, blue bloods, if you will. I know there's an argument over that in regards to Penn State and, like, all that, but, I mean, these are two of the winningest all-time teams, two teams that have not won a national championship in a very long time. So one of them gets a spot to go do just that against either Ohio State or Texas, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I think this is going to be, to quote good old JR, because it's the word that I think of when I think of the kind of style matchup. It's going to be a slobber knocker, I feel like. There's not going to be a whole lot of finesse in this game.
No.
It's going to be rough and tumble. So I'm feeling like the mood is set, at least over in our area, our neck of the woods, and so I'm prepared for it.
Yeah, obviously the weather up in Dallas and Fort Worth. Jennifer sent a video of her back porch. It's snowing up there in certain ways, so there's still that particular story for tomorrow. But in Miami, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. Look forward to that. I'm excited because there's always been this pull, this tug of whatever else about what's good, what's not, this and that, who made it. We're down to 4, and every one of them has a hell of a resume, and every one of them try to win a national championship. I'm looking forward to it. I really, really am. We'll hear from, again, Ryan Day and Sarkisian in just a moment. Love is healthy. It looks like he's going to play. We mentioned that about Abdul Carter. Not sure 24 hours late. I'm sure he's going to give it a go, too. In your opinion, who has the advantage, Aller or Riley Leonard at quarterback? Because I think both of them are really, really good at what they do.
I think it's like I said earlier. I think it's a push. They're both really good. They're both gamers. Aller's probably the better passer. But and he's the one who's, got maybe more NFL chops to him. But I don't think that really matters tonight in the way that this game is going to go, because I don't think that either team's just going to see wide open receivers running down the field all that often. I mean, if it happens, it's going to be mostly because somebody fell down. And so, yeah, I don't like, it's hard to me to say, because what Riley Leonard's strengths are so very, good. Same with Aller. They can both run the ball. Again, Aller's a better passer, but again, has that mattered in all the games that Riley Leonard's played this year? No, it hasn't. It really hasn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a bit of a push. I don't even necessarily think this comes down to a quarterback duel, but I suppose that it could. I mean, you don't know until you roll the ball out there, but I think I saw Dan Orlovsky talking about how this could help raise Drew Aller's NFL profile in particular. He certainly has the tools to be a guy that you see at the next level. I think that's been talked about for a couple of years, that's in the cards for him if his cards are played right, and they seem to be right now, and he's got a big opportunity tonight to take another step in that direction. But, yeah, I don't think there's a inherent advantage for either side based on quarterback play, but I think whoever plays the best tonight, yeah, that will obviously go a long way in potentially determining the outcome, but pretty even matchup. Leonard, obviously the tried and true veteran quarterback, but Aller's played a lot of ball as well. I do think he's got the higher upside overall, but that's not necessarily something that goes into account into tonight's game.
Yeah, and I'm going to have something that The Athletic did earlier in today on their site, kind of looking at the 4 quarterbacks, what even the pro scouts say about them and what their positives have been, what they've done better lately than they may have done earlier on in their career. So let's go to Carson Beck, and then we'll get to the Texas and also Ohio State media availability from today. Carson Beck is entering the NCAA portal. I guess I forgot about this. I thought he was gone, thought he was going to test the NFL. I don't think he played well.
He had declared for the draft.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying. I thought he was gone. I think he was. And then all of a sudden, and I saw what Graham Coffey, who covers Georgia, said in a response to this, that he said, you have no idea how much money's been thrown at him, and he would make more money perhaps next year in college than he would no matter where he's drafted into the NFL.
Well, what NFL team is going to pick a quarterback coming off elbow surgery? High.
Well, and
especially
one
with the
who
way he played.
prior to that wasn't even that great.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, overall, he had some moments, but he had just as many moments of bad interceptions and bad decision-making when I watched him at least. I don't think he had played his way into being in the discussion for top quarterback unless you're going just based on pure, let's take out the results and the actual, let's just go on skill set. He's got a foundation to work with, but I don't think anything about his play screamed top NFL draft pick this year. Absolutely not.
No, and again, he got hurt. He's at UCL surgery. So that's a huge thing. And if he's not, here's the question. If he's not coming back to Georgia, and their quarterback situation is far from settled, right? With Gunnar Stockton and Ryan Pulissi, it makes you kind of wonder too. But again, the money being thrown around, and they don't have Gunnar Stockton might be the next Stetson Bennett. Ryan Pulissi might be really, really good. So if Kirby Smart says, okay, fine, go, and they want to wait it out, the rumors are Miami, Ohio State, Texas Tech, which I was kind of surprised on Texas Tech, but
they really are going all in, aren't they?
Yeah, they really would be if they are. But I would bet dollars to donuts he's in orange and green next year and in South Beach. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's surprising because he had declared, like y'all said, and obviously the injury probably threw things for a bit more of a loop than originally expected. It's not like this is the greatest draft class in the world, but I think that injury does matter quite a bit. So I think the other side of that is the money that you're talking about, and that's obviously being thrown about. And it seems like every time there's a big-time quarterback now, there's Miami at the front of the line. So if you want to blame anybody for maybe setting a market where college quarterbacks decide it's better to stay in school than go to the pros, blame Miami basically for that. It feels like anyways. They set the tone from the very beginning of the portal opening up and have continued to do so, and now look like they may very well do that again. If they got Carson Beck, I don't know. That didn't really strike a lot of fear. I'd be more worried about Cam Ward, honestly. That one, I was like, oh, wow. They get Carson Beck. He's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to be, fearing that the way that –
Does Cam Ward flip the ACC last year? He completely flipped it because nobody knew about SMU, but he doesn't go to FSU. That's part of their collapse, and they're the defending champions. He doesn't go anywhere else. So – does Carson Beck, if you're Clemson and Cade Klubnik coming back and adding portal players for the first time ever, does Carson Beck scare you like Cam Ward does? No, I don't think so.
No, probably not. But, he's definitely somebody that still deserves respect and is a good player. But, yeah, I don't think he's got, the Cam Ward kind of feel to him. But, he'd be a big-time player, will be, I guess, in the portal, and it'd just be a matter of how much you trust him coming back from that injury and being 100% healthy. He threw a lot of picks. He also threw a lot of touchdowns. So the guy's got skills, but we just saw him very up and down in some of the bigger moments, and that's just kind of what maybe gives you pause on this being the slam dunk that a Cam Ward seemed to be when you went and picked him up. But, yeah, Miami's looked at as the favorite based on the initial reports. Again, that's kind of become their thing. Go grab the big-name quarterback in the portal, so it won't be surprising at all if they do that. I guess there's other schools like Texas Tech, I guess, that would be but interested as well. So, yeah, that's going to be fun to see how that goes. And maybe we're talking about him playing in the Big 12 next year. I don't know. But I'm excited to see where he lands and was definitely a bit surprised by today's news, not having paid much attention. I don't know if there was any scuttlebutt on the dogs boards or whatever. But, this was kind of surprising to see that come out today, given we'd all expected and assumed and heard him declare for the NFL draft.
Yeah, what Graham Coffey said, reports of Georgia's quarterback Carson Beck entering the portal. I'm not surprised. He has been offered some huge amounts of money to be 1-year rental for different schools. He didn't get into really who they were, but that's what he said when that story first popped earlier this afternoon. All right, Texas and Ohio State tomorrow in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. I still get a kick out of it that when the games are at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, which is about 15 to 20 miles or so west of Dallas, that's the game's in Dallas. I know the city of Fort Worth and the cities of Arlington, too, get frustrated with that. It's the Dallas Cowboys. They play in Arlington. That's their name. But it's in Arlington at AT&T Stadium. I think this is going to be a great game. I think both of them are perfect matchups for who the teams are, their personalities. And here was a question. They had their media today, Ryan Day and also Steve Sarkisian. This is a couple of 3 minutes long. The first question was directed at Ryan Day, who then said, Sark, you go first.
Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch. A question for each coach. Ryan, you guys have had the fewest offensive snaps of any of the semifinalists. Chip Kelly said last night that was by design, I'm assuming, just to reduce the wear and tear. How much of a benefit do you think that is right now? And for Coach Sarkisian, you said in our Zoom thing last week that you were a massive underdog. Why do you think that?
You want Coach Sark to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, the reason they have the least amount of snaps is because they're scoring so fast. There's so many big plays that are happening. But some joke in there, but some reality. You know, they've been extremely explosive offensively. And I think a lot of times, you know, in this format, now we're kind of in this NFL format model, it's not always about who was the best team for 12 games. It's who's playing the best football this time of the year. And I think we could all agree what Coach Day's done, their team, you know, them coming out of that Michigan game and what they've been able to do since the playoffs have started has been tremendous. And that's a credit to Coach Day and his staff of regalvanizing that roster and getting them going. And I could probably poll everybody in this room, and you'd probably all agree they're the favorite to win the game. And that's okay, but that's football, that's sport. That's why we have to do what we do. So I'm not going to back off of what I said. The reality is the reality. Now we have to go perform. That's our responsibility as a football team to go perform. But they've earned that right because of the way they've played here the past couple weeks.
Yeah, and you know, I just feel like every week is a whole new week. And so, you know, certainly the way that Texas won the game last week, you know, there's momentum there. And I think it's important for all of us, if we have momentum, to keep it. If we don't, we have to go get it. But the truth is that nothing that Ohio State has done or Texas has done up until this week has anything to do with what's going to happen in this game. Zero. And, you know, if you think any otherwise, then just go back a couple weeks and see where we were a couple weeks ago. And so every single week, the slate is wiped clean, and you have to start from scratch again. And that starts with your meetings, with your walkthrough, and with your preparation. And so the bottom line is this game is going to be played, and the team that plays the best and executes the best is going to win the game. And so there's a lot of opinions out there, I'm sure, of, you know, what everyone's going to expect. But ultimately it's going to come down to the players on the field and how they play. And there's going to be a lot of great players on both sides, and it's going to come down to who takes care of the ball and ultimately executes better in the end. So it should be a great night for football. And so certainly we're obviously excited about playing in the game. In terms of the way that we designed this year, you know, part of it was the fact that we felt like by cutting down the number of snaps, it would certainly help with the length of the season and the health of our team. But also getting in a huddle and having Will Howard look 10 guys in the eye and break a huddle together kind of grew as the season went on. And there was a little bit, a part of that we felt like gave us a little bit of an edge. We broke the huddle together, which I know it sounds crazy, you know, the huddle, you know, it's almost like going back in time, but it's sort of a new thing really because of, you know, the no huddle offenses that have been around, and certainly we've been a part of that. But as time went on, the guys felt more and more comfortable and broke that huddle together as a group and as a team and as a unit. And I think that helped us. Now, we don't always do that, but it has allowed us an opportunity to be more cohesive on offense.
Ryan Day, Steve Sarkisian. It was fun to kind of watch that a little bit as much as I possibly could. And I think Day, I feel like he looks comfortable. Obviously, Sarkisian, I love watching his pressers. I really, really do, in the way that he handles them. All right, so.
Man, they were really playing up the. You guys are huge underdogs.
Yeah.
You guys that's really been played. I mean, 6 points is a big spread, so I mean it's valid to say that they are. But like I just feel as though if you're Texas, you were playing that card up as much as you possibly can. I think we've seen them do that.
Because it doesn't happen that often.
No, it doesn't happen that often. And yeah, I think there's been like almost an overload of how big of an underdog they are this week because I don't see it that way. I mean, maybe the Buckeyes go out and kick their ass tomorrow night, and if they do, I'm not going to shed a tear for that. But I don't see that. I feel like one of the few teams that can match up talent for talent with Texas is Ohio State. But you know what that means? One of the few teams that can match up with Ohio State is Texas.
Right.
They got a pretty good I'm here. It's Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith's like, yeah, they got a pretty good secondary. I don't know if you guys are aware. Like, I mean, there are some issues, but it just feels like if you were to go based on just like public perception this week, Ohio State's going to kick their ass, and I don't agree with that.
I think part of the thing is that we're looking through the glasses of there are elite teams that everybody's afraid of in college football anymore, at least this season, right? Not that you're not afraid of these teams, but there's no 2022 Georgia sitting out there. There's not an 0-1 Miami or a 95 Nebraska.
You know, I used to think, and I said this last summer, I said whoever wins this first playoff is going to have to end up being like one of the greatest teams of all time, and I was totally wrong on that because it won't be. Like, it'll be one of the most impressive runs, but because of the way the regular season went, that extinguished that before the playoff even started because it became clear that, yeah, there's not necessarily the all-timer of a team that you're going to be talking about 10 years from now going, oh, man, that 24 Ohio State team, man, we'll probably talk about them if they finish this run. We definitely talk about Texas, but we're not going to be putting them next to 95 Nebraska and 0-1 Miami and all those teams.
Look,
no.
I know that like people, because it's called a different thing than free agency, don't understand that the transfer portal and free agency are the same thing, just without rules, like with less rules. And free agency has created parity in every single sport. Look, the Yankees are still the greatest baseball team ever, right? They have 27 World Series. But far less of them happened after Curt Flood than did before, correct? And that, the teams there's more teams, there's more expansion. So again, not only did the free agency happen in Major League Baseball with Curt Flood in the 60s, expansion happened in the 70s, right? And you started adding teams and adding teams and adding teams. Well, playoff expansion, free agency, it's all there. That's what creates parity. We have more parity than we've had. Now, the brands will be able to be on top of that, just like the Yankees are all the time. They have an advantage. The Dodgers have an advantage in Major League Baseball. Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State, they have big money. They'll have advantages over the other ones, but they will not have it, because being able to stash a freshman 5-star for 3 years until he's ready just isn't going to happen anymore. So that changes everything, and everything's changed, and that's why it won't be this great team. And so the games are way more unpredictable than they used to be.
Yeah, and it's hard for anyone to be 0-1 Miami, or if you want to say 95 Nebraska's in that mix too. But what an attrition, because we don't know what's going to happen with the two games tonight and tomorrow. And you hope that whoever wins, anyone is healthy, but you don't know what could happen. You could lose a corner tonight. You could lose someone else's tonight. I was thinking about this kind of late last night. Some of the most notable games, Texas playing somebody inside the top 10, whether they were or not, and some of their most notable games against teams, and of course the one in 05 with the 05 season, they beat USC for the national championship. USC was 1, Texas was 2. They beat Nebraska in the first Big 12 championship game. They weren't even ranked, and beat Nebraska, who was number 3 in the 2-time defending champions. They also have lost to Oklahoma. They've also lost a game a couple of times to, I think, Alabama when they were inside the top 10. And then, of course, this year you had Georgia and Texas, number 1 Texas, losing to number 5 Georgia. So they have had, in the semifinals last year with Washington and Texas, Washington was 2, Texas was 3. As teams inside the top 10, whether Texas was or not. They've had big wins, and they've also had some losses along the way. All right, go ahead. You guys take it from here. What else you want to do?
We were just rolling along.
All right, Alabama, offensive lineman. I didn't know much about him. Paul, you're telling me that he's a 2-year starter, Elijah Pritchett?
Yeah, Elijah Pritchett, 2-year starter. Good player. I know that the Alabama offensive line, like we just said about great college football teams, nobody's going to look back on the 2024 Alabama offensive line and say this was one of the best 5 hog mollies in the history of hog mollies, but he's still a 2-year starter at Alabama and started on a playoff team last year. Big, strong guy. A nice pickup for Nebraska. They need to do everything they can. Look, I don't know who the next quarterback is going to be after Dylan Raiola, but Dylan Raiola has special athletic ability and talent, and I think that was evident. I know that they were 6-6 this year. Most of that's not on Dylan Raiola, but he was just a true freshman. They need to.
They were 7-6. They won their bowl game.
7-6, yeah. But
please give us a winning record.
Yeah, 7-6. But they but they need to do everything they can, and it looks like they are. I mean, getting Dane Key, getting the wide receivers that they have, creating the kind of offense around him, changing up the offensive coordinator, bringing in Dana Holgerson, bringing in a guy like Pritchett, who's been a 2-year starter in the SEC at Alabama. So he's got some Saban blood to him in there. I think that's all good for the Huskers.
I mean, yeah, they need offensive linemen, so they got a big guy there, and that should help. They need to win, though. So, go and get as many of those guys as you can, and that's a nice addition, it appears on paper. But, yeah, I mean, this is an off-season where it's fun to look at the toys and the bells and the whistles, but ultimately I think that's more fun when it's early and it's new, and now you're in year 3, and it's like, all right, 7-6, that was a nice step up, but now what's the next step up? What's next? Matt Rule's common saying. What's next is now trying to take it to a different level. So going and getting big old offensive linemen to protect your, blue chip quarterback is obviously a big thing on the to-do list. So yeah, they're attacking that, and that seems like it's going to be should be a good pickup for them.
Vanderbilt was one of the fun stories, at least for most of the year. Of course, their quarterback is back because of that junior college exemption for him, and maybe before it's all said and done for all the others that want to use that as a possibility of playing one more year in college. And they also get their all-SEC tight ends, a conference that has great tight ends. And Eli Stowers is back. He is going to come back to Vanderbilt. 49 catches, 600-plus yards, 5 touchdowns, and had a huge game in their win against number 1 Oklahoma back in October.
Yeah, I like Eli Stowers. I mean, he's an interesting story. Was trying to play quarterback for a while for a couple different stops, and then moved to tight end, and is now at Vandy. And when you think about, he was first-team All-SEC tight end, but you look at the draft this year when it comes to tight ends, he would be at best the third one taken, and because I think, maybe fourth one taken, because Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren from Michigan and Penn State, respectively, are going to be the first 2 off the board, and probably Tyler Warren first. I mean, he's the dude I'm excited to watch for Penn State tonight more than anything. He is an absolute monster. And then Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green will be third. So then you've got this race for fourth. Well, why not go back to Vandy, cash in on some NIL money, and see if you can get up in that spot next year?
Yeah, he's carved out a pretty nice niche for himself since being a quarterback at A&M. Made the position change, entered the portal, and has become a really nice tight end for the Commodores over this past season. So, yeah, I think that's a great get for them. They got Pavia back as well, so we'll see what all that roster looks like when it finally settles in. But getting those 2 back is certainly, I think, a lot more than you expected. You probably were going to be returning. If you were to start looking ahead late point of the season, you'd figure Stowers might be gone to the NFL. You figure Pavia was out of eligibility, and instead both those guys are back. So, that's a huge anchor for Vanderbilt and that program to rally around and put out there again next year and see what they can do else around that to make it even better. But really nice foundation was laid, and now 2 huge columns, 2 huge pillars of that foundation are going to be back in black and gold. So that's massive for them.
All right, I saw this story, and Paul, you're the one that sent this one out. Boise State offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter, all but saying that Oregon contacted one of their players following their game in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, we've heard Jim Mora Jr. last week call out Washington State. Really, a lot of this is going on in the Pacific Northwest. It's troubling what's going on up there. But Oregon got called out, and of course, if we had like a Super Bowl squares poll or whatever, a pool of who I thought would maybe get called out for this first about trying to poach talent in tampering, Oregon would have been one of the ones that would have had pretty good odds on it. Or not good, you wouldn't want a lot of money betting on Oregon. Like, you would have thought, okay, just because of the whole Nike thing and how they kind of, from the outside looking in, seem to operate. So, yeah, I'm not surprised to see him change up or throw a change up out there and say, yeah, it's Oregon. I'm not going to be the offensive coordinator anymore. Why do I care? Like, let me go down swinging. So I'm curious to see how many more coaches, now that there have been a couple guys over the wall, will now start calling this out specifically.
Here's the question I have, Craig. Got a call from the Oregon Ducks offering him $700,000. Oregon's not that stupid. It could be a third party like what we heard from Mac Brown or whoever else. I can't imagine that somebody with an Oregon Ducks number is the one that made the call, but that's what Dirk Cutter is saying.
Well, of course it's not, because we know better than that they don't do that. That's against the rules. So, of course it's not a guy directly from Oregon. That's the first step, is to not be that stupid and say, hey, I'm the coach at Oregon. I'm doing this highly illegal thing. Like, one thing that can get us busted for tampering, no. This is going to be an outsider or somebody loosely linked that, it's not directly connected to Oregon. So, yeah, of course that happened. But I'm not surprised at all, and I totally believe the story, and I don't care if it's true or not. If you ask me, because it doesn't really, long-term for me doesn't mean one thing or the other, really, but do I think it's true? Yeah, absolutely I do. Do I think it's multiple schools all doing the same thing? Yeah, I do. Miami's doing it probably. Oregon's doing it. I'd imagine that they're all doing it to some extent. I do, though, appreciate that he's at least putting a name on it and not just referring to unnamed schools and bitching and moaning about it. Like, hey, if you're going to say something, then put something else behind it and name names. And so I'm glad that he did. Now, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it because, again, Oregon's not stupid enough to send an actual official representative to go do these things. But I do think that it's better to have it out there and at least talked about and rattle that cage a little bit than to just let it go unchecked. So, yeah, Dirk Cutter said, screw it, I'm going to name names, and I respect that. I appreciate it, but I think he knows, just like we all know, there's probably not much that can be done about it, but still better than just not saying anything at all or letting it go unchecked, like I said.
Bear Bryant Coach of the Year finalist. Pretty good list. There's probably a name or two that you would think should be on it, but it's not. You're not going to have 25 finalists. But here are the names. Shane Beamer, what a run they made at the end of the year, South Carolina. Signetti, who has captured one or two of these already. Spencer Danielson at Boise State. Kenny Dillingham, the job he did at Arizona State. Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. I remember rumblings when they were 9-4 his first year. There were thoughts, could he do it? Well, totally unfair, and he's turned them into where they are right now. Rhett Latchley, what a year for SMU. Jeff Monken, a great run. Obviously, he would give up the Coach of the Year opportunity if he could have beaten Navy. And then Steve Sarkisian at Texas. One of the things that I've always said about Coach of the Year, Dillingham, Signetti, even Latchley, they outperform what anyone could have thought. Those guys are going to be a part of the list, but sometimes it's the ones who are supposed to win and do win because the expectations are so high that we take them for granted. So it's good to see a couple of guys up there who are with programs that have had success, including Sarkisian at Texas.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a great list. Who vote? Do we vote on this? Do you and I vote on this? Is this one of ours?
There's two different ones. There is the Maxwell Coach of the Year, and then there's this one here who I voted on this one yesterday.
Okay, I didn't get to email this, so this is not me thing. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel bad. I feel left out. Are they mad about my Lou Groza award? I voted Ryan Fitzgerald for
Homer
for all three spots.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's
sorry about your luck, Louisiana guy.
Yeah, it's
you
your
didn't
email,
go unanimous.
not mine. I voted, and I voted for Kenny Dillingham as the Coach of the Year at Arizona State in my national vote. But all of those guys have had. There's a reason why they are finalists. MC Gusto was asking, where do you guys find that information when it comes to TV ratings, viewers, audience, etc.? There are 3 to 5 really good outlets on Twitter and elsewhere that have those numbers. Craig has them a lot of times either on Tuesday or Thursday during the college football season, and not just for college football, but MC Gusto, there are many out there. Who's the guy that now moved to The Athletic that was such a great business writer? I forgot his name. I'm sorry about that, but there's many of them, so you could find it.
I'll try New York Post.
Huh?
Andrew Marchand.
Yeah, Andrew Marchand. Yeah, great one. And there's a few others, but there you go. Andrew Marchand, if you want to, at least can start with him.
Yeah, you got to be careful with people and graphs in college football and numbers because those aren't always what they seem to be. But I do think there are some just straight out there black and white numbers that you can just take in and aren't twisted or just the bulk of what you want. Sports Media Watch has the college football ratings pretty much the day or two after the weekend wraps up. I know there are others that dive a lot deeper into that, and I don't know, like if you're looking for like quarter-hour breakdowns and all, that's when it gets into like the pro wrestling territory for me, when that started years ago and really killed a lot of my love for actually the hobby, was because it got too into the weeds. But if you're looking to get in the weeds, like I'm sure there's some sites that people could point you towards where you can get into like the real more in-depth. If that's your thing. But yeah, just in general, where I always pull them from is Sports Media Watch. So I think that if you've got time, that you can, I think they probably got a list of just all the top games, or you can go week by week in there.
All right, I can't believe this story. So the game is in Miami tonight, right? Notre Dame and Penn State. The game with Ohio State is tomorrow up in Arlington against Texas. I can't believe this. There's nobody that did this.
Oh, I think so.
Ohio State fans were in an elevator, Johnny McGonigal, and thought that they were playing in Miami.
Hey, I totally believe this.
You can't, the bracket never would have put them in Miami.
That doesn't matter.
These were predetermined.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
No, they did. I
could see if somebody ordered tickets a long time ago. Yeah.
All right. Are there any people in Ohio watching us right now? I can tell you, as a Floridian, how many people from Ohio want to go to South Florida this time of year for any reason and will just go, oh, hey, Orange Bowl, that's where we're going, and just see Miami and go blank? You know who that happened to for a couple years? Happened to LeBron James. He decided, you know what, I'm tired of this crap. I'm going to Miami. It happens. They really want to.
That was to play. That was to play. That was when they did that famous interview.
He was cold. He wanted to see some bikinis, and he wanted to warm up.
I could see somebody that ordered tickets to go to the Orange Bowl to watch the game, and they were hoping their team would be in it, and not the way things are, not when the conferences are matched up to certain games like they are when it comes to the college football playoff.
And I guess like you have to wear your gear because it's what you brought. But had that been me, I would have been like, can we go to the store and I can just buy a shirt?
Like a T-shirt?
I
thought you didn't wear stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you mean? I wear a
Florida State jersey.
I don't wear jerseys, but you have gear. I mean,
if you're going to go to the game.
They're jerseys, but they're just wearing gear.
That's a strange story to me. I can't believe somebody did that and they didn't know when they were in the – unless they already knew, and then there's somebody, hey, what are you doing here? Well, we thought they were going to play in this game, and they're going to be in Arlington. But Miami's a great place to be right now based on the weather. When we come back, Shahan Jararaja from CBS. He's been covering the festivities today with a Cotton Bowl tomorrow night. We'll have Max Olson. We'll go over that big story from yesterday on the transfer portal. His thoughts about Carson Beck now entering the portal. And Craig's off the radar. Zach Gelb will join us. Infinity Sports Network. Normally Wednesdays. It'll be today at 5. And Mickey Spagnola on the Cowboys offseason. And, of course, the story that will play out as long as Jerry will let it in the head coaching situation with Mike McCarthy. This is 365 Sports.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Another So-So Pizza from So-So's Pizza? But wait, there's Marco's! Our new Triple Pepperoni Magnifico Pizza is stacked with classic, crispy cupped, and new bold shredded pepperoni. It's triple the flavor, and only at Marco's. Just $11.99.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student-athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student-athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student-athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student-athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Looking for the best selection of new and pre-owned cars in Central Texas? Look no further than Allen Samuels in Waco. From trucks to family SUVs, we've got it all at Allen Samuels in Waco, your friend in the car business.
Come by, let's be friends.
This is 365 Sports.
3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
The Athletic did a huge story today, long, like 6 or 7 pages long if you were to print it out, because I'm a tree killer. And they have what people have said about the quarterbacks, whether it's Aller, Riley Leonard, obviously Quinn Ewers, and also Will Howard. We're waiting on Shahan Jiraraja in just a moment. On Aller, I don't want to call him a game manager because I don't want to say that, but he does a great job managing the offense. This is from a Big Ten assistant coach. All the stuff at the line of scrimmage he has to do, all the moving parts, he's done a really, really good job with all of that, especially being in year one with that system. An NFL scout said this: several teams are in believe it when we see it mode. 6'5", 235. He can move. He can deliver off platform. His fastball leaves a vapor trail. So there's a thought about Penn State quarterback Drew Aller. We're now joined by Shahan Jiraraja, CBS Sports, and obviously a huge game tonight, Shahan, and then, of course, tomorrow, Texas and Ohio State. Your thoughts about, let's start with tonight, your thoughts about, is it mirror images in a way of Notre Dame and Penn State? They kind of just seem like the same teams.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. There's no question about it. They want to be led by their defense. They have veteran quarterbacks who have some real strengths and also have some limitations. But, I think that what really is the biggest contrast to me is kind of the style of these head coaches. When you talk about Marcus Freeman, he's somebody who is a former player, of course, played at Ohio State a while back. And I think that it's taken him some time to loosen up. But you start to see some of this come together. He's got some great influences, whether it is, of course, from the coaching ranks, whether it is from the analytics ranks. I think he's a really progressive type of head coach just in the way that he approaches game management in situations like that. And with James Franklin, you're talking about a coach who at times has been too conservative, who, maybe isn't as aggressive as a coach like Marcus Freeman. Now, I do think that the addition of offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki from Kansas has been huge for this program. You've seen this offense continue to get better, but these are two programs that I think want to be led by their defense. And the question for me is going to be which offense is able to make their imprint on this game as well.
Riley Leonard versus Drew Aller. Who would you rather have in a pinch?
Yeah, they're such different players. It's crazy kind of how different they are. Just to get into their profile a little bit, Riley Leonard is much more of a running quarterback. He's been very inconsistent throwing the ball this year, but he is a battering ram at quarterback, and he gives you enough as a passer to where you at least have to respect it. With Drew Aller, you're talking about a prototypical NFL quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the arm. You've seen moments in this college football playoff. I think of that downfield touchdown throw against Boise State where he layers it right over the top of the safety and into the arms of an outstretched receiver. So, again, he is a big-time passer of the football. Doesn't give you as much necessarily as a dual-threat player. If I had to pick, heading into a matchup like this, I probably would prefer to have a Riley Leonard because I think that his floor is just a different level than Drew Aller. I think that even if he struggles to throw the ball, you know you're going to get that running game. I think back to the Georgia game last week, he only threw for 90 yards on 24 attempts, which is just an astonishingly low number, but he ran for 80. And he also picked up several key first downs over the course of that game, including in the fourth quarter. So I think that I probably would take the gamer in this situation just because of the strength of these two teams, but it really is a pick your poison in some ways.
Shahan, where is your excitement level for this one, this first semifinal game, and just knowing the kind of road that we've walked to get to this point of this expanded playoff? The other matchup we're going to get to, obviously, but just your general thoughts as we get ahead of tonight's game and your excitement for Nittany Lions and Irish and somebody getting to play for a national title, maybe win one for the first time in forever.
Well, yeah, I think that you mentioned it, right? There's so many positive storylines going into this game. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be one of the more competitive games that we've had in the college football playoffs so far. And there are so many moving pieces that I think that the coaches and the coaching staffs will have the ability to impact, whether it is, does Andy Kotelnicki take a shot to try to force Notre Dame to really sit back and worry about the passing game? What do we get from this Notre Dame defensive line, and how does Penn State's offensive line match up with it? I think that there are just so many matchups that are kind of indeterminate, I guess you could say, at this point. And that makes it a lot of fun. So for me, I've got really high excitement for this game. I think this is going to be one of the better games of the playoff. It might not be very high scoring. If you're a bettor, I'd probably take the under on this game just because of the way that these two teams play defense. But, on a scale out of 10, I'm probably giving it a solid 8.
Shahan, we know Steve Sarkisian's history, Washington, USC, then had to kind of make a comeback in life and won a huge battle that is unbelievable, and then goes to coach with Nick Saban, comes into Texas. He's turned him around very quickly if you really think about it. Ryan Day, incredibly successful, but has not been able to beat Michigan. James Franklin's been very successful, but has not really been able to get them in a certain position. And then, you have one more that is a part of this and what Marcus Freeman has done. Who, in your opinion, is the best story among these four?
Oof, so many good ones, honestly. I think, to take a step back and talk about all of them for a second, I don't want to act like this is a bunch of scrappy underdogs making this Final Four, right? Like, this is 3 blue bloods in a group of 4. But when you look at this group, only one of them has won a national championship in the college football playoff era. Only 2 of them have won a national championship in the BCS or CFP era. Because with Penn State and Notre Dame, you're talking about since the 80s, the last time that these two teams won a national championship. You're pushing 40 years at this point. So I think that it's really cool that that this new format has opened the door and opened the possibility to, again, not Akron coming and winning a national championship, but teams that haven't necessarily been in this conversation before. I do think that offhand, what Ryan Day had to go through this season, especially after that loss to Michigan, and the way that this team has come back angry and the way that they've come back focused, it's one of the most spurring things that I've ever seen in my years covering college football. I've never seen a team face adversity and come back as strong as this team has. Now, look, talent-wise, they've always had it within them. I've said all year, I think that this is the best roster in college football, and I think it's actually harder to name the second because they're so much further ahead than everybody else. But this is a team, again, that was a little listless, that was a little lifeless at times this season, and something happened within those 10 days between the end of the regular season and the college football playoff. They found themselves in so many ways. And, all 4 of these coaches, like you mentioned, they're kind of defined in many ways by not being able to win the big one as yet. But I think that nowhere is that more true than at Ohio State, where you've had a team that's rated among the best in college football year after year. You've had a team that was a field goal away against Georgia back in 2022 from potentially playing for a national championship and maybe winning a national championship. You obviously talk about how close some of these Michigan games have been. You talk about, in 2019, they go and lose a close game to Clemson. The next year they come back and they just run into that Alabama team in 2020 that might be the best of the Nick Saban era. They've been so close for so many years. I think it would be really gratifying to see them break through.
Okay, I need, because I think I know what's going on, but I would like you to explain what's going on with Carson Beck. And if he was, Georgia's situation isn't settled for next year. So it would seem to make sense if you wanted to play college, you would just go back to Georgia. But I feel like there's something we don't know here.
Well, I think that both sides are probably a little ready to move on. And, I think that it's a little unfortunate for both sides, frankly, but especially for Carson Beck. I mean, it's kind of gotten lost because of how much football he's played over the last 2 years, but he just sat and waited for 3 years. Nobody really does that anymore as a highly ranked quarterback coming out of high school. And by the way, 2 of those years that he had to sit and wait were behind a former walk-on in Stetson Bennett. He came in, he obviously played really well in his first year. And I think that he feels like he's been blamed for some of the offensive issues that they had this year. And I don't think he's wrong. I mean, you look right now at what Brock Bowers is doing at the next level and what Ladd McConkey is doing at the next level and what Todd Monken is doing at the next level. Like, there's a whole lot of stuff that's changed about this offense that has absolutely nothing to do with the quarterback position. And so, I think for him, his thought, I imagine, when he came back was always, well, to have a successful NFL career, it's really helpful to have 2 years as a starter, to hit X amount of starts, to be in a good situation. And I think he probably looks around right now at Georgia and just wonders if this is still a good situation for a quarterback to walk into. I mean, you watch, of course, in the college football playoff, Gunnar Stockton comes into the lineup, and I think he plays a pretty solid game overall. But, they couldn't block. Their receivers dropped tons of passes. They couldn't run the ball at any consistent level. And if you're Carson Beck looking, I mean, that's what you're planning to walk back into if you come back to the University of Georgia. I think that he's going to try and find a situation where, one, of course, he can win. I think he absolutely does care about winning. And two, where he has the opportunity to potentially show off more of his game than he was able to in what ultimately, because of, I think, some coaching decisions, was a pretty limited Georgia passing game and Georgia offense in 2024. So the obvious answer is, by the way, a school that last year also pulled somebody who had declared for the NFL draft, that of course being Miami and Cam Ward last year. I think there's a really good chance he ends up there right now. But obviously I think he's going to be very open-minded and ultimately is going to make a decision that I think puts him in the best position to have a successful 2025.
Shahan, I think one of the reactions to that story was when people saw Texas Tech mentioned as one of the teams that could be interested or is interested or whatever, along with Miami, who just, that's obvious. They're going to be like that team probably every year. Notre Dame was mentioned, I think, in one of it as well. But I'm seeing some of the Tech fans like pushing back like, no, like we're good. But did that raise your eyebrows at all? Or do you have any thoughts on maybe Texas Tech perhaps being interested in trying to shake things up at Signal Caller?
Well, look, I mean, I think this reminds me a lot of back in 2020, 2021, when Joey McGuire was hired and they made a really significant push for Quinn Ewers when he was transferred from Ohio State.
Yep.
And I think that there was real push there from Texas Tech. I don't know how much serious consideration there was. And I think it's going to kind of be like this for Carson Beck too, right? Like, you've got a quarterback in Baron Morton who's played a lot of football, had a lot of success there. They've got a freshman, by the way, in Will Hammond, who they think is absolutely the future of the program at Texas Tech. And the nice thing about Carson Beck is that he would only be a one-year stopover. I don't ultimately think that this is going to happen, but I do think that Texas Tech wants to be taken seriously. I think that they want to send out the message, hey, we are swinging as high as anybody. Of course, they have one of the top transfer classes in all of college football. They've done a tremendous job this offseason, but I don't necessarily think that there's a whole lot of fire to this smoke.
Do you think Miami would be the number one spot for him? Because they will be desperate enough to overpay.
Well, I think it's a couple of things, right? One, yes, of course, they do pay well. I think that Cam Ward could certainly tell you that. Two, they are extremely quarterback needy. You watched, of course, in their bowl game, they put in Emory Williams, who just is not ready at this point to be the kind of quarterback that Miami needs to be what they hope to be in 2025. It's worth throwing out, right, that Carson Beck's girlfriend does go to Miami. That probably is at least a little bit of a relevant factor. He's certainly spent some time there. But the other thing, I think more than any of these factors, is they took a quarterback last year who was going to be a mid-round draft pick in Cam Ward, put him in a great situation. He ended up being a Heisman finalist. And now, even though he was a fifth-year player, he's going to be a top 5 to 10 pick in the NFL draft. That's what Shannon Dawson's offense at Miami does. And, they have some questions to answer at receiver. Like, they need to stock up in that room as well because Xavier Restrepo is going to be gone. But I do think that also, if you're a quarterback right now and you want to up your stock, I mean, nobody's done it better over the last year than Miami.
Shahan, when the Jay Hartzell story popped that he was going to SMU from Texas, which really was not many people knew this. In fact, it was shocking in a lot of different ways. I saw the reaction about I'm keeping a close eye on is whether a brain drain of Texas public higher education talent is on the way because of how much meddling is coming from the state government. You just feel like that one of the reasons he got tired of dealing with politicians when he's at Texas, where you have to deal with politicians?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the reality, right, is that I think that at the University of Texas, if you're the president or chancellor of that system, you are a politician and you are a public figure. At SMU, and I live right down the road from SMU. My sister went to SMU. It's just a different lifestyle. Obviously people in Waco at Baylor, right? Like they can also attest. People at TCU, Chancellor Boschini stepping down for them. Like it's just a different life than having to go down to the State House every day, to have to worry that, somebody's going to pass a new law that's going to really try to target something that you're attempting to do. It's just a different lifestyle than being the chancellor at the University of Texas. And I think even compared to Texas A&M, because UT is the school in Austin and because they are so visible when it comes to the Austin State House, like, again, you're dealing with a lot of outside factors. And we talk about this all the time in the context of the athletic department, right? Of course, there's the football coach. Of course, there's the athletic director. There's the president. There's a chairman of the board. There's outside boosters. There's just all sorts of people who get involved whenever it's just coming to the athletic department. Well, the university president is dealing with that on an even bigger scale, of course, when trying to, allocate funding to the, whatever department, right? Like right. It's just something that you have to fight with almost every day. And when you go to SMU, I mean, again, like obviously there's hard work to do there as well, but it's a different kind of hard work and it's a different kind of grind. And so I am curious long term. And look, this is not something that's new necessarily. There's a reason that public school presidents don't necessarily last a whole lot longer than 5 to 10 years. Whereas, with Gerald Turner, I mean, at SMU, I think he was there for 20 plus years. Like it's just a different kind of life. And I'm curious if we're going to see some movement on that. Now, look, Texas isn't going to stop investing in college athletics anytime soon. I think they're going to be just fine from a football perspective, but it's just an interesting dynamic to watch and one that, again, I think is going to continue to get bigger.
From a semifinal perspective, I guess we'll end it with this, Shahan. The other game, Texas and Ohio State, are you as confident in the Buckeyes as everybody else across the world seems to be? I mean, I'm like preparing myself for a blowout the way people are talking, and I don't feel like that's the case at all, but maybe you do. How do you see this one?
Well, I want to start with this. Texas's defense might be the best in the country, and that includes Ohio State, who I think is the other team that's in contention for best defense in the country. And when you talk about Texas defense, especially their secondary, they will provide just a completely different challenge to Ohio State's passing game than they've seen. They've got the Thorpe Award winner in Jahdae Barron. They've got an All-American defensive back in Michael Taft. They've got a fantastic transfer in Andrew Makuba. Malik Muhammad is a really kind of underrated developing cornerback as well. And so I don't think that Ohio State's going to be able, for example, to do what they did to Oregon against this Texas defense. Here's my huge issue and my huge worry for whether Texas is going to be able to compete in this game. They averaged 1 yard per carry against Arizona State. In the 2 Georgia games, they averaged 1 yard per carry in each of those games. And Ohio State just held the undefeated #1 Oregon Ducks to negative 23 rushing yards. So the issue becomes, is Texas going to be able to run the ball at all? Like if their running game gets erased, and not obviously that's not sack adjusted. When you talk about the Oregon game, I mean, Oregon was at 1.8 sack adjusted yards per carry, just an obscene number. If they can't run the ball, I just don't think that their offense works at all. Like, I think that people have complained and pointed to issues at the quarterback position, but it really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the quarterback position. Teams know that they can take away that run game without having to dedicate a whole lot of extra help, and it puts everything on the passing game's shoulders. And while this is a really good group of receivers, it's not Xavier Worthy and it's not A.D. Mitchell necessarily in that receiver room either. So I don't think it's going to be a blowout, certainly. I think that there are things that Texas can do to try to scheme around it on both sides of the ball to at least keep this game close. But I just don't think that they have the depth necessarily to be able to keep up with Ohio State. And especially if they can't run the ball, that's when I think you run into real trouble.
Yeah, because they grilled Clemson with the run game. Just destroyed them with it. Thanks for your time, Shahan. Appreciate it. Enjoy the games. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week. We'll know who's in the championship game. Shahan Jayaraja with us from CBS Sports. Yeah, they were absolutely stuck in the mud against Arizona State when it came to the run game. That'll be fun to watch. You know what? Games like this when UT, and Max Olson's next, when UT does seem to be an underdog. I don't get this thing about anyone thinks it's going to be a blowout, but I guess I'm missing or not reading enough. But get a big play early, get a turnover early, something like that, and you know what? Game on. And I still haven't even made my pick. I'm not that sure who I'm going to choose to win that one tomorrow night. When we come back, got him? Okay, we're going to go to Max. Okay. Am I not reading the right stuff? A 6-point spread is a pretty big spread when you have two alphas. Paxton brought this up, and so did a couple of others. And even Sarkisian, I thought, oh, you're just blowing smoke. You're just sitting there trying to create some kind of a, oh, my God, it's us against the world. I have not seen that, but maybe I'm not paying attention. We're now joined by Max Olson from ESPN with us on 365 Sports. Max, do you feel like Ohio State's a heavy, not Vegas favorite, but a team that some people think might pop Texas pretty good? Do you get that same impression?
I think so. And I don't know that that's necessarily about Texas, struggling to put away Arizona State so much as it is. I think people probably view that Rose Bowl as like that's a national championship caliber matchup, and it wasn't close. I think that it's everyone's back on the Ohio State bandwagon after two playoff games of like, oh wow, look at that, they're finally playing their best football, and I think certainly their best football, like Oregon just had no answer for. So I think it's more out of respect for just the unstoppability of Jeremiah Smith and all the playmakers they have, and the way that I think Ohio State could certainly finish with the number one defense in college football this year with Jim Knowles. So I think it's more out of respect for the Buckeyes than out of just like, oh, Texas can't match up with them, because physically Texas totally can match up with Ohio State.
Max, you've just done all this portal work. I know it still goes on, but it calms down a little bit right now. And then Carson Beck jumps in.
I hope so.
Yeah. You were like, when you see Carson Beck, you're like, oh, hey, this is a big story. Or do you go, oh, come on. Like, can we stop for a second? Can we just stop?
That is how my wife feels. Yeah, that is certainly. We were at lunch today when that broke, and I had to break out the laptop and disappeared for 90 minutes to deal with all that. Yeah, I mean, and I think we saw it even with Cam Ward last year, where he announced he was going pro on New Year's Day, and then all of a sudden he's going to Miami like a week later. I think that you heard a lot of rumors about Miami being interested in Carson Beck in December, and I felt like that was kind of dispelled by Carson Beck declaring that he was going in the draft. But here we are. I think there's a pretty good chance he's going to end up at Miami unless someone comes in and makes him a Godfather offer here in the next few days. I would imagine that's going to be the move for him and for the Hurricanes. And you can understand the pitch, obviously, after what Cam Ward did. I think Cam Ward, a year ago, he was looking at his situation and feeling like he was hoping to be a day 2 pick if he went pro. And I think that's probably where Carson Beck is right now, because Carson Beck is not going to be able to throw a football until like March at the earliest. And so how do you go through the draft process and improve your stock when you're up against that? So I think that what Cam did to improve the way he was viewed in 1 year at Miami, I think Carson Beck probably would be chasing that same kind of thing, whether it's at Miami or somewhere else. So, surprising. But and I think if he didn't have the elbow injury, you'd probably say he's the best player in the portal. But that'll be a process here coming back from that.
Max, did you have any type of reaction to seeing Texas Tech named as maybe one of the suitors for him?
I'd be really surprised by that. I know obviously Baron Morton has dealt with some injuries in his career. I don't know that going after Carson Beck is necessarily the solution to that when you consider that Beck is not going to be able to go through spring ball wherever he's going next. Obviously Texas Tech is shoving the chips all in with this portal class, but I don't think that quarterback is necessarily like a lingering priority there. I would be very surprised. Not impossible, but I'd be very surprised unless they were just getting really concerning reports on kind of how Barron's looking. Like I think they're pretty comfortable with him being the guy that they are building this all around to chase a Big 12 championship in 25.
Yeah, no, I feel that way too. But I wanted to ask just because that got mentioned and certainly a lot of eyes, opened up like, what? Wait a second, Texas Tech, what? But in terms of the portal, UCF has gone really heavy with Scott Frost. Oklahoma State's gone heavy with Gundy trying to turn this thing around. Texas Tech's gone in super heavy. Is anything from that league in particular jumped out to you at all, maybe more so than elsewhere, or just kind of maybe a theme emerging with some of these teams who have decided like, hey, you know what? People question Dion flipping a whole roster, but damn if it didn't work maybe a little bit. Kenny Dillingham, same thing. Like what was kind of taboo now seems like, it's not maybe as taboo anymore.
It's funny. You hear so many coaches now saying like, oh, we're really trying to recruit production over potential out of the portal. And it's like, yeah, well, Kurt Signetti was saying that a year ago, and look how it worked out for him. So right. I think everyone looked at what Indiana did, and certainly what Kenny Dillingham did going into year one at Arizona State really paid off in year two. Same thing with Deion Sanders at Colorado. Like, yeah, I think you've got some pretty real evidence there. That if you can get the right guys that have multiple years, especially, and you can kind of not have a good hit rate on that and keep them in the program and stuff, you got a chance to do something special. Now, obviously, you see the disaster at Florida State. That's not really scaring people off of like recruiting the portal. Like I think people look at the success stories of this past year and say, man, if we're willing to spend a little bit of money here and we've got a little money as we head into revenue sharing. We can really upgrade at a bunch of spots. And so I think you're just going to continue to see more and more teams say, all right, let's go get, 20 guys out of the portal and see how much better that makes us. And I think people are a lot more comfortable doing that now than they were a couple of years ago. And so, yeah, I think Oklahoma State, you probably especially with literally a brand new coaching staff around Mike Gundy, you're like, okay, they're probably going to make a lot of changes to this roster. UCF, lost a lot when they went through the coaching change. And so they had to add a lot. And Texas Tech is they feel like they're really close and they're tired of coming up short. So they're making a massive investment in this portal class.
Is there somebody that has completely surprised you at how aggressive they've been in the portal, at least so far?
Probably Texas Tech. Probably Texas Tech. I would say part of that is just because even if you've got money to spend, even if you've got a lot of even if you've done your homework in terms of evaluating who you want to go get, it's still not easy to go get them and to get them on campus and for the official visit in Lubbock and get them locked down when they can go to all these other places. And so they have been competitive for guys that legitimately were at the top of their board. And I think there are players they are bringing in, like Howard Sampson at tackle from North Carolina, like Romello Hyde at outside linebacker. Reggie Virgil, like they're bringing in guys that they feel like can be all Big 12 caliber players. And so, I think that one's been surprising because you knew they were going to try to pull it off, but they got really high caliber players. I think in this cycle, it'd be fascinating to see how the pieces all fit together. But yeah, that one has certainly impressed me. I think the other one that you'd have to say is right up there in terms of being best portal class this year is probably LSU. And LSU kind of sat things out a little bit last year. They didn't recruit a ton of transfers for the 24 team. And obviously they aren't happy with how that season finished. And they went out and signed a bunch of guys that I would have in top 1 or 2 or 3 at their position in this cycle. So that's a team that has gotten a lot better in the last month.
You know what surprised me about Tech, Max, was, a lot of times, that you kind of re-recruit guys that you missed on or had a conversation with. They went all over the place. This wasn't just guys they were necessarily familiar with from recruiting. Okay, who's the best safety? Who's the best tackle we can get? They went for that and not just for, okay, who's a guy who's familiar with Lubbock, Texas?
Sure, and I think the theme of the haul for them is they're all guys that primarily that have 1 year left, that are viewed as potential NFL draft picks. That even if they're viewed as possible 6th or 7th round picks, they're guys that have NFL potential and are trying to come back and put it all together. And so you got some really motivated guys. I think Lee Hunter from UCF, the defensive tackle, he is a proven game wrecker in Big 12 games. But you're right, they recruited kind of from all over the country. You didn't really have to have Texas ties, and I think they did a great job of meeting their needs. To get Quentin Joyner from USC, who is a kid that's coming home, Chance Carter from Parker Heights is I think going to be a great replacement for Jalen Conyers at tight end. The offensive line, defensive line took a ton of players in the secondary. Like I think it's an interesting strategy. It probably reminds me of Ole Miss a little bit a year ago of just trying to take guys that you feel like are pretty close to being NFL players, and can they come in and give you their very best football next year?
How much did that Diego Pavia JUCO year doesn't count situation kind of blow your mind initially? And I guess what's the latest on that, Max? Is that just still specifically for him? Are the floodgates going to open up? Like, how does all that work at this point, a couple weeks since that story broke?
Yeah, pretty surprising. But obviously, the NCAA the win-loss record in courtrooms is not very good lately. So Diego probably felt like he had a chance here. The way that is currently being applied is that the NCAA gave out a blanket waiver. So it's for players that played junior college football in the past and were going to have their eligibility expire at the end of 2024. Those players are getting an extra year. So if you were going to be out of school, if you had to go pro, this gives you a chance to come back for one more year if you want to. And we've seen some pretty good players like Malik Benson leaving Florida State, or Rasul Faison, running back from Utah State, who's going to South Carolina. Benson's going to Oregon. Like, there's been some pretty good players who probably were looking at going to the draft and not sure how that would go for them, who are now going to be able to cash in and come back for one more year of college.
Malik Benson is more hype though than production at. I mean, sure. I'm not going to blame him for what happened last year, but for Alabama, he was like the fifth wide receiver there.
Well, yeah, Florida State was asking him to be a number one, and he was not a number one, definitely. But with Oregon having Evan Stewart and some pretty good talent back, it's more of a complimentary piece for them to help replace the production of a Trayshawn Holden or a Tez Johnson a little bit. So I think that's a decent take for them late. Obviously, there's a lot of really good and really expensive receivers in the portal this year. So, yeah, probably a pretty good deal for Malik Benson to be able to land another spot like that.
I don't know how you keep up with it, Max. It's amazing what you do with that portal, and keep it going, because that summary was great, and I know you got to go right back into it like immediately. And so keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate your time when we get it. Have a great day.
Hey, thank you guys. Always a pleasure.
That's Max Olson, ESPN.com. We have a text group. It's Garrett, Paul, Craig, and then also me. We don't leave. We sometimes include Emery, but quite frankly, we just want to make sure he doesn't know what we're always doing. But I am amazed. Like, there are days I'm like, holy crap, this guy, like the Carson Beck one, I'm like, what? But it is nonstop, and that's just part of the bigger names of what's going on, rather than I think he said in his article, what was it, 2,600 or so players that are in the portal, and it's January the 8th or 9th, whatever today is. It's just nuts. But, hey, it's part of the deal, and he keeps up with a great job doing that as well. All right, I read what some who played against Drew Aller thought about him at Penn State, and then also an NFL draft guru analyst thinking about what he is at the next level. What are they saying about Will Howard or Quinn Ewers? And, of course, there are more, like Riley Leonard. Those four, what are they saying about those quarterbacks? What do we say about them, too? This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right, both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors. Baylor Athletics Trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm, welcome home.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Mention some things said about Drew Aller. This is from theathletic.com, multiple writers. Let's go to Riley Leonard, Notre Dame. Transferred, of course, from Duke. Last offseason, 3 years at Duke. His passing numbers aren't going to blow you away, but, man, he reminds me, are they at all similar, Riley Leonard and Sam Levitt, just older? Kind of seems like that to me from what I've seen. Here's a couple of comments from him as we talk about this amongst ourselves and also in the chat. He's hard to bring down. He's not a burner, but he's pretty damn athletic. That's from an ACC personnel staffer. He can move around, create more time in the pocket, which always creates a lot of problems and puts pressures on the defense, especially for the DBs. As a passer, he's good, not great. He kind of pushes the ball a little bit. He's a good fit for what they do with that offense. And then this from an NFL personnel person. I don't think the accuracy is great. To me, what makes him special is the scrambling, not even the quarterback run, like a Jalen Milroe quarterback run is a problem. With Riley, they call quarterback runs. You can defend it. To me, it's the ad-lib scramble, which makes him so tough, kind of like back in the day, 50, 60 years ago, for some of you my age, of Fran Tarkenton.
Yeah, I don't think he's quite as wily, maybe, as Fran Tarkenton is.
Well, that's a bad comparison to be using to whoever.
Yeah.
What the hell is he doing? And then he makes a play.
Yeah, that's probably the more accurate description, because he'll lower his shoulder more than he'll try to get around somebody. Jalen Milroe can kind of do both. He'll throw a spin move on you, but yeah, Riley Leonard's not going to do that. He's gonna get the first down and fight for it.
Didn't he go airborne in that game?
He'll do that. Yeah, he's kind of a wild man when it comes to that. But yeah, he's just, the thing about Riley Leonard. The NFL scouts can, they're going to say what they want about him. I mean, that ultimately for the next game or two, if they win tonight, doesn't matter. It's just all about the way that he just starts gets the engine running for that offense in a way that we haven't seen a Notre Dame quarterback really been able to do it in quite a long time. And he's really, really good when the game is close, too. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't cost them anything. they're always kind of in position to be in control of the game, or at least have it go where it's not completely away from them. In fact, they've not had one single game this year that was completely away from them. I mean, Northern Illinois won on the last-second field goal. All the rest of them they've been pretty much in control of the whole time, and that is due in large part to the fact that Riley Leonard is just so good at leaving them in positions when they don't score of, okay, it'll be fine. Like, we'll punt, we'll get it back, defense is good, and then we'll move on next time.
Craig, anything on Riley Leonard? All right, Quinn Ewers. Maybe one of the most discussed quarterbacks in all of college football. One, he came out of South Lake Carroll, went to Ohio State. He was like the All-American guy as far as the top-ranked quarterback. Depends on who you look at, what service, but was there. It's interesting now, that's who they're playing, is Ohio State. I don't even know why I didn't bring that up earlier, but that's where he started, and that's who they are playing, of course, tomorrow night. Here's a couple of notes. Here are a couple of notes and quotes on him. I think he's got an elite arm talent. People underestimate his ability from an SEC defensive coordinator. His touch, he throws the ball in the flats. It's like handoffs. I love that. That's a perfect way to describe how he throws the ball in the flat. It's like handoffs. Normally you're like, throw it in the flat, we'll tackle them, but he's so accurate, the ball gets there. It's kind of like, I can let him do that. No, I can't let him do that. The running backs have the ball in space, and they also have, of course, Sarkisian dialing up a bunch of great plays along the way. I think it's pressure. The person of an SEC defensive coordinator said that affects Ewers the most. Pressure affects any quarterback the most. I think it's the post-snap changing the looks. I think having a multiple attack. I think if you go in the game, we're just going to do this, we're just going to do that. I think once he settles in on you, if you let him, then you are in trouble.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I mean, he's not as escape, I guess, with the pressure. He's a better runner than most give him credit for, but he's been playing with that bum ankle all year, so it's not really that's not really going to be part of the game.
I thought the run he made, even though they really dominated A&M, but I thought the run he made early in that game to pick up a first down that was like 30 or 40 yards when it was tight, like low scoring early, and A&M hadn't even scored. I thought that's when he was coming off a pretty bad ankle. And he just seems to be able to make that one play.
But the biggest thing about him is he's been injured quite a bit. I mean, he hasn't had a big, gigantic season-ending injury, but he's had elbows and ankles and ribs
shoulder
and kind of all these things. So that's been Quinn Ewers' knock. And is he the superstar elite quarterback that Texas thought he was going to be when he rolled in there? No, I mean, he's not a first-round draft pick, but he's still been very, very good for them. He's got a great arm. Sark's built an offense for him that really, really works. So, yeah, I don't, does he get an A+? No, but he's not. He's passing with flying colors every day, to me.
I mean, they're playing for the national championship, so, he's lived up to some of his billing. I mean, he had to have a role in that. So, yeah, I mean, the guy was definitely hyped over the moon when he first signed. I mean, you would have thought that he was going to play 1 year and go to the NFL, and that's not hyperbole. I vividly remember some of the talk about him. He's the greatest quarterback prospect and this and that, and I know that that's recruiting, and that's especially recruiting folks. Just the hype is never ending, but he had a lot of it as a recruit. He had a lot of it, and especially when he signed with Texas, that was the missing piece. And so I don't know that he's been that all to himself, certainly not, but he has been a part of this resurrection or this reframing of Texas. And just when you think he's out of it, he finds a way to flip a switch and make some big plays at the end of a game when he's not been playing that well, or you feel like he's about to get pulled and he gets that warning of you better do something or your ass is on the bench again. And he lately, since having that happen in the SEC championship game, or was it the first meeting with Georgia, but he's,
no, the first meeting he was taken out for a series. Yeah.
So then, and then Arch didn't do anything either. But since then, it's he kind of knows now, oh, I got to turn this on. And yeah, he's dealing with a lot of injuries. Very talented. I mean, I definitely agree with the arm talent. He's got extreme arm talent. That's where a lot of that hype came from, was his touch and his ability to make very difficult passes look very easy, passes that not a lot of college quarterbacks are able to make necessarily. He was doing it at South Lake Carroll, and now is it only more polished and more prepared and more experienced. So I think he's like a bit of an enigma when it comes to the NFL. I don't know what at all to expect from him. You would have thought that he would have been like first-round buzz last year based on the way he was talked about as a recruit and then as a transfer. That obviously wasn't the case. He's back. You would have thought this year he'd be talked about, especially in this quarterback class, and he's not. So I'm just very interested in what that future in the NFL looks like for him, whether it's this year or what. I mean, the thing I'm most interested in is what he does do after their last game. Does he go to the NFL? Does he go to the transfer portal? Does he stay at Texas and make things really interesting? Like, 'cause I don't know how that would be sustainable. I just don't know. I don't think they want that at this point. But, yeah, whatever he does after their last game is going to be fascinating. And he's really talented, but there are just times where it seems like he's either just not all there or just not sharp. And sometimes you got to, like, hit the reset button on him. And then he's like, all right, he's good to go. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he'll throw that, like, what are you doing?
Stupid interception that cost you, prevents you from blowing open the game versus the team hangs around in the game.
The game against A&M, when they dominated, that could have been a 31-3 game. The game against A&M, remember, he threw the pick six. He just kind of he's had a fumble or two. Here's the thing about him. You know, in this day and age, I don't know how long Cam Ward's been playing college football, Incarnate Word, Washington State, Miami. I don't know how long Will Howard's been playing now, obviously, with his second team, among others. Quinn Ewers is actually only in his fourth year of playing college football. Let's not forget now, he left his senior year. He did not play high school football his senior year. He left. And so he's actually one of those in this day and age who's younger than you think because of that. And I think the patience is there. He's got one of the prettiest passes. Yeah, every once in a while he throws up on himself, and quarterbacks are going to do that. Cornerbacks are going to give up touchdown passes. Kickers are going to miss field goals. But he has, I think, one of the prettiest throws I've seen.
Well, that was the thing in the A&M game, though, was like that was kind of the Quinn Ewers experience on the bad side.
Yeah, but he's also the one that took off on that one run when the game was just kind of like, eh.
But it was, they had to put Arch Manning in the game to get the first touchdown, right? Like, there was those things that just kind of lingered around him. Now, part of that was because dude's been injured. He can't run that play. Like, they can't. He had that great run, right? But then after that, when they needed to score a touchdown, they still put in Arch because that was the play they were going to call, and they didn't know that he could roll that up again. So, yeah, that's it, because you said that game it felt like it was 31-3. The final score of that game was 17-7, and it was because Texas physically dominated A&M's offense all night long, and they just never had that. And that's what the fear that lives in them is, if we get bad Quinn, then they're going to score 17 points because they're playing against a tough defensive team.
Yeah, I think he's just a very up and down quarterback at times, but when he's up, he's as good as anybody in terms of his skill set and what he's able to do with the football. And when he's fully healthy, obviously, which hasn't been the case, but he's really good. I mean, I just don't know how you place him in the big picture compared to what I thought it was going to be like, where he was the surefire number one quarterback after 3 years and whatnot. But his future is a lot more murky, although if he goes and wins a national title for Texas, like, his name will be etched in stone there in history for forever, and that's all he set out to do to begin with. So none of that other stuff really matters right now. He's, to quote him, living his dream, and he's got them 2 steps away from winning a national title and doing something that not even Colt McCoy or a lot of other great Texas quarterbacks were ever able to do. And by the way, it does bother me when you go, I don't know how many years, because you can look it up. Cam Ward played 5 years. Riley Leonard's in his 4th year. So it's not all that different. They're not like 6th and 7th year quarterbacks.
Yeah, I didn't know. I knew Cam Ward had played at least one extra year. I'm not sure what you mean.
You're like, I don't know how many years they played. Well, it's right here. They played 5 years, and he played 4 years.
I thought Cam Ward, there might have been one of these other years. But he did play. He has played 5 because it was 2 at Incarnate Word.
Yeah, 2 at Incarnate Word, 2 at Washington State, and then 1 at Miami.
1 year this year with Miami. But in this day and age where you have quarterbacks that seem like they're in their 5th, 6th, or even God knows 7th year, he's a young pup. He's right on target of where he should be. And he could come back for another year if he wanted to, like you said.
That's why you can't assume, Riley Leonard must be he's a 4th-year guy. He's played 3 years at Duke, and he's in his 4th year, so he's right on schedule. He's not some 27-year-old quarterback, so not all these transfers are guys that are 7th-year super seniors. They are just maybe in Riley Leonard's case, looking to close out their career, place different, and it's obviously worked out very well for him. It's worked out well for Ewers, and I don't think those guys are off track from what they would have been if they'd stayed where they were originally at all. Ward obviously taking a little bit of a longer run, but even still only 5 years for him. So this is nothing like Dylan Gabriel or, TJ Finley or players like that we have seen go above and beyond your normal scope of eligibility.
NFL lens on Quinn Ewers is from theathletic.com. What NFL scouts appreciate about him, though, is the fact the sword cuts both ways. The pressure on Ewers to direct traffic, feed all his receivers, generally make Sark's offense sing at friggin' Texas. With Manning behind you is as intense as it gets. And while there are plenty of concerns here, Ewers has absolutely displayed the type of poise, toughness, and resolve most teams see as non-negotiable for starting quarterbacks. Many scouts are higher on Ewers than some might think. His arm talent has always been terrific. He's athletic enough in the pocket. If he's playing behind what will be a good offensive line, he's going to have some issues, though, no matter what, when it comes to pressure in the NFL, which most quarterbacks, you see some of the best quarterbacks ever all of a sudden start to get pressured, and they change quite a bit. So there we are, the notes on Quinn Ewers. So we've hit Riley, we've hit Riley Leonard, we've also hit Aller, and also Quinn Ewers. This is the one I'm real interested in. What do you think they're going to say about Will Howard at Ohio State?
I mean, Will Howard's is a really good college quarterback. I don't think he has, a lot of NFL chops about him, but the guy's just won, most every time he's rode out there since, 2 years ago at Kansas State.
Let me find the page here with Will Howard. One of the things that people said about Will Howard that they liked, and the critique was how this is a guy that basically was asked to leave at Kansas State because they had Avery Johnson, and yet there were times early this year where things were not perfect. He did not let that overcome him. He did not let that ruin him. Even though, there was the Michigan game, it seemed like when we hear about resiliency that Will Howard has shown that quite a bit as the coach, as the quarterback, both at Kansas State and also Ohio State. Think about who he's throwing the ball to. Jeremiah Smith, also with Egbuka. He's got Henderson in the backfield along with Judkins. He's had a lot of great weapons when it comes to what he has at Ohio State. But that's why I think every one of these guys has a great story. They have, I don't know if anyone really ever questioned Aller. I know that they've questioned Howard. I know people have questioned Ewers, even with the talent. And then Riley Leonard, I don't know if he's ever had much negativity around him.
Well, Riley,
people didn't care because he was at Duke.
He was at Duke, yeah. He's the little engine. And all these guys are kind of different in that. Will Howard and Riley Leonard are kind of little engines that could, right? They created their story, they built their own path. Quinn Ewers, every coach in the country would have hidden a body for him had he asked to get him to come to their school. And then Drew Aller was in kind of the same boat, not maybe as hyped as Quinn Ewers, but for Penn State, the minute he got on campus, they were already done with the quarterbacks who were on the roster. I mean, the fans were like, no, Drew Aller. That's all they wanted was Drew Aller. And sometimes that can be disappointing when you finally do become the starter, and he hasn't disappointed at all. So he's lived he and Quinn Ewers have lived up to the proper amount of hype, I think. They're the same in that regard. Where
Aller's a 5-star guy. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, so there are a lot of there are 3 former 5-star quarterbacks that are in the transfer portal right now that haven't even come close to sniffing the field, right? All that consistently compared to what Aller and Quinn Ewers have done. So Aller and Ewers are probably more similar. I mean, Ewers is probably a little bit better, in the quarterback Olympics part of this thing, but I don't think there's too much of a difference.
Here's a thought about Will Howard. One thing he's exceptional is that he knows what he's seen. He's going to be able to carve you up because he's going to know where you are and where he's supposed to throw the football. As a defensive coordinator from the Big 12 when he was at Kansas State. He doesn't have this ridiculously crazy arm talent, but he's got so much of an IQ, an acumen for the game. If he knows what he's seen, he's going to be able to make the throw. He's played a lot of football, Big 12 defensive coordinator. That's his biggest asset to me, the amount of snaps he's had, the different defenses he's seen, the different looks he's seen. There's not a lot that's going to catch him by surprise, and he'll be tested, of course, with what Texas has, their speed, and what they do on defense. And the other part about Will Howard is after the Michigan game, he's dialed up his 2 best games maybe of the year against Tennessee and the rout against Oregon. So he's been resilient when it comes to that too. All right, when we come back, Craig Smoak off the radar and more. Emery Winter is working on 365 Sports tonight, 10:30 tonight on the CW. Excuse me, I know there's a cough button. This is 365 Sports. Don Chibador and Coffee Beans in the Town West Shopping Center went by there today, picked up a bag of gummy bears. It's got a CBD product in it, allows you to take one, or you may take half of one, or you get to know a little bit about what you want. It allows you to fall asleep much more comfortably, and if you are one of those that tosses and turns and you lose sleep and you wish you just had that extra 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, maybe you can by trying Vita Dreams inside Don Humidor and Coffee Beans. 48-foot walk-in humidor with every brand that you'd want, with the great cigars, Cohiba, Padron, and more, inside Don Humidor in the Town West Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Richland in Waco.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
365 Sports, taking you up until about 6 o'clock. Hope you enjoy the game tonight. If you want to, in the chat room, I've seen a couple of scores that people put up. If you want to give us what you think tonight, Penn State, Notre Dame, will work on that Texas and Ohio State game tomorrow. I saw a 23-20, a 20-17, a 24-20. A lot of those about the same. I would be surprised if this thing got into like a 30-27 type game because of the styles, but who knows? Notre Dame with, wasn't it the Love run that went 98 yards right off the top against Indiana that just like crushed their soul? Wasn't he the one that went 98, and then of course he got dinged up a little bit, and now he's back. I'm excited. There are certain warts about this college football playoff setup, the bracket, and whatever else. But for the most part, I'm glad where we are and who we are to be able to watch a couple of games and the winners spit out to play for a national championship later on in the month. So give me your thoughts. Penn State, Notre Dame, just give the score. And I've seen a lot of about within 5 to 8 points the same, 23-20, 2017, 24-20, et cetera.
Notre Dame 2017.
2017 Notre Dame, okay? I hope that both games, sometimes the championship games in the NFL, the conference championship games are better than the Super Bowl. And hopefully we'll be able to get that the next couple of days, and then we'll see what happens in the national championship game in Georgia. Craig?
Off the radar time.
Okay. All right, let's get into it then. Here we go. Let me get that back up. Did that just delete? Please tell me that didn't just delete while I was gone. Hold on 1 second.
How did it do that?
Because I might have hit the wrong button.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't expecting to do it right just this second.
You didn't hear me say it before we went to break?
No, I guess it's zoned out for a second, I guess. Yeah, you're going to have to give me a second because I think I might have deleted it on accident.
All right, what's your final score then, Smokey?
I'm going to say 23-20 Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think I'm picking Notre Dame because I believe they have a better coach. That's the thing I think. I mean, like, I'm not knocking James Franklin overall. I think he just gets tightened up in these things, and I think that Marcus Freeman is like the opposite, where he doesn't coach tight. Like, as soon as it gets tense, that's when he starts having fun.
Well, we don't know. He's never been in this situation. Now, he's been in the playoff games. He's been in big games. But this is a different animal. And you know what's so unfair is you get to these games and you don't win them, then Bobby Bowden, Tom Osborne, and others get the rap. Well, they can't win the big game. But they're in the big game in the first place. And sometimes they win a national championship and then both eventually won multiple national titles. Cam Williams is back, and I saw a couple of notes on that. The right tackle for Texas, he will be playing tomorrow night against Ohio State. That's a big player to get back in the lineup for them too.
All right, so yeah, I got enough here. I think I can go ahead and do the segment here. I think I've got enough just loose notes rather than the ones I had, but that's okay. So here we go, off the radar, a few things not in our normal purview discussing here in this segment, and we'll start off with the fact that one of the big offseason hires in college football over the last few weeks when it came to the coaching carousel was Bill Belichick in North Carolina, and a lot to do about just his history and the cachet that he brings, and this belief that he can come into college football and make North Carolina as relevant as they've ever been, if not more relevant than they've ever been. And certainly there for a little while at least, there was probably more talk about North Carolina than there had been in a very long time. It's sort of died off a little bit, but now back in the news, and interesting to see UNC head coach Bill Belichick as a headline. And he hasn't even coached it down yet, and will he even coach it down? Because apparently he's been hearing from a lot of NFL teams, and according to Tom Pelissero at NFL.com, that includes being reached out to by one Tom Brady, who does have a management position with the Raiders, or ownership position, I should say, with the Raiders. Brady, apparently, along with all the others who have reached out, gauging his interest in seeing how he would feel about coming back to the NFL, says that they're looking into seeing whether he would reconsider a move back to the NFL from his decision to go coach college football. He agreed back on December the 11th, so he hasn't even been on the job for an entire month yet, but did agree to a 5-year contract with the Tar Heels back then, has been building his staff. We know like Freddie Kitchens was one of the first names that was going to stick around. But Brady, according to Pelissero, has been in touch with Belichick as the Raiders weighed the future of Antonio Pierce, who they obviously went and fired earlier this week. And, Brady, apparently, according to Pelissero, believes the situation in Las Vegas requires a coach of Belichick's expertise and stature to establish a sustainable winning program. There are a handful of jobs open, but his contract in North Carolina does include a $10 million buyout if he were to leave before June. Now, I think one of the interesting things about his contract was that there was that buyout early, but I don't think so much like later on. But this is why you have a buyout when you signed him when you did, was because there was a coaching carousel still to come in the NFL. So if you're going to slap a big buyout, it was going to be this very first year before he even coached it down for you. So there's a lot of jobs, the Jets, the Saints, the Jaguars, etc. But any thoughts on Bill Belichick now being flirted with by the NFL now that he's taken a job in the college ranks?
I don't think that he will do it, although they did fire their GM today, which would seemingly open up for Bill Belichick to go in and rebuild the Raiders in his likeness in the way that he would want to. With Brady there, it kind of makes some sense. I don't know. I don't know if he would do that. And Steven Simcox yesterday on Triple Option said this is all just an elaborate plan to get Steve Belichick the head coaching job. Because if he left them now, I mean, they could easily go back into the list that they didn't go to and wreck somebody else's situation. But I don't think he's going to, but it would be interesting, especially the Raiders, if he went and took that job.
He wouldn't be at North Carolina had some of these NFL teams, knowing they're going to probably make a coaching change, shown interest in him in the first place.
Yeah, that's, of course, that's before they fire somebody, right? Once you fire someone and you start looking at the candidates, maybe you change on that.
Yeah, maybe. But, yeah, it's just been interesting to see his name get thrown out there after taking that North Carolina job. So last looked, Football Scoop had it to where he was, looking at a high school coach to bring into the fold there at North Carolina. So he's still going about putting his staff together, but it is funny to see his name now being floated out with these handful of jobs that are open, but particularly the Raiders with the Brady connection, the desperation, the sheer desperation of that franchise to win, and obviously the pull of being in Las Vegas as opposed to Oakland at this point makes it a bit more enticing, but still have the same ownership, still have the same, whatever else ails you that's been problematic in the past for the most part. So don't know that, it's a slam dunk going back to the NFL, but he already made his choice. He's going to North Carolina, but it is interesting to see that, and if he were to get plucked, I guess there would be a massive buyout for this first year, but that's, again, why you put it in place. Meanwhile, speaking of the Raiders, I guess they figured they might as well circle back around 2 days after firing head coach Antonio Pierce. Now it's time to fire their general manager as well. Man, they do it first class there in Vegas, boy. Sure. They just, what a smooth ship, just completely streamlined. But, yeah, 2 days after firing head coach Antonio Pierce, they have now departed with general manager Tom Telesco after just 1 year, saying, "We appreciate his efforts in helping build a foundation for the future. We wish Tom and his family all the best." That was the statement for the team. He is the fourth GM since 2019. They had Mike Mayock for 3 seasons, Dave Ziegler for 2 seasons. Champ Kelly was an interim for a little bit last year, and then Telesco just the 1 year this year, and he was hired about this time a year ago, so he makes it about 365 days. But, he is out of there after they finished 4-13, have no quarterback play to speak of, and they clearly need a house cleaning. But, just odd to do it 2 days. Like, why not just one fell swoop and you're done and you move on? But I guess they needed to think about it a little bit more. I guess they wanted Antonio Pierce to have his spotlight in the getting fired carousel. I don't know, but regardless, I think people were puzzled when this wasn't announced 2 days ago. Now it's announced today, so almost a full house cleaning for Mark Davis.
How many GMs since 2020? You said 4?
4. Whoever's next will be 5.
That's why you're not any good. You got to have some continuity, or you're just whoever's hiring the general managers and head coaches should be fired, and I know that's the ownership. The Raiders have one of the great histories in the NFL, but, you hear about the Cowboys stretch of 30 years or 29 years of not playing for a conference title. The Raiders played in 2002 in the champion Super Bowl. Bill Callahan was the head coach. They won the AFC championship. They hadn't won one in 19 years prior to that. They're in a terrible drought. Maybe if they got some continuity, possibly, obviously hire Belichick, but if they do, I don't think they can. I don't think he will. But good God, they've been in a drought.
Well, why would you want to work for Mark Davis?
The Raiders, the Commanders, and the Cowboys are 3 of the most historical franchises when it comes to championships, and they are all in a horrible 2 or 3 year drought.
Okay.
Decade drought.
I've heard good stories and bad stories about Al Davis. I've never heard somebody say something good about Mark Davis. This is why this guy's a good businessman. This is why he runs a good ship. Like, none of that. And a lot of that is he's got severe, issues with his dad that are well documented and that are never going to get resolved because Al Davis is no longer with us. And I don't know why. And he has no children. So when he dies, that's going to be an interesting thing. If I were Mark Davis, and I know you're trying to prove something to the world, I would sell my $1 billion franchise and just go be a rich a-hole. That's what I would do.
Why can't he still be that?
Why not just keep the NFL team and do the same thing anyways?
But because he's not they're not why do you want the stress? You could not work at all. Now he's having to fire coaches.
Yeah,
and
well, I mean, I would say
him.
on the big picture thing with that, like some people have a lot of money. Doesn't mean they're not going to do anything.
Yeah,
like they're just going to sit on their ass and just not do anything just because you have a lot of money. Like I think you're probably having, seen an ability to want to work. Probably want to matter. Like you're Mark Davis, owner of the Raiders. Who are you? You're just some billionaire that nobody even knows or sees anywhere with a goofy haircut. So he matters more as the Raiders owner. And I don't think the losing bothers him nearly as much as it clearly bothers a lot of their fan base.
Yeah.
Because they do the same thing. Now, they've got Brock Bowers, and they're going to have a top draft pick, and maybe they go get Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or something. I don't know how it's going to work out for them. But, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, but I just don't think a lot of people just go like, I've got all this money, I'm just going to sit on it and just wither away, whatever. He clearly has some desire to still run this team, but yeah, he doesn't run it very well at all.
I don't know how much he's involved in personnel decisions like you hear with other owners, but most you would think that most people with a lot of money buy something and it's a toy or it's a hobby. For Jerry, he, is that part about that role he played in that discussion in Landman.
How many people play fantasy football? He's doing it for real.
Yeah.
Like, he's, actually owns the team. Like, he gets to be real-life fantasy football guy. So, yeah, I don't think he's the brightest bulb. I don't think he's a great owner by any stretch of the imagination. But the dude literally has a fantasy football team, basically, that he gets to run. So I'm sure there's a lot of fun in being able to do that. But, the Raiders moving on from their GM, moving on from their head coach, and we'll see what else is in store eventually. New ownership maybe breaks the curse. Maybe Mark Davis is able to do it with the right draft picks. I don't know, but they just seem to be a constant mess, and that's been the case ever since the Tuck rule, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the case for the Raiders. Meanwhile, I'm sure you guys have seen on the news the wildfires out in California. It's been wild to watch, especially a couple of nights ago when it was really getting underway. Now it's broken out into multiple fires, but that first night when there was just a couple of fires initially, it was still pretty bad out in the Palisades area. Burned down a lot of Pali High, the Palisades High School. I think, some of their facilities are ruined and a lot of stuff in that area. And been kind of monitoring how that was going to affect the sports world. Not that that's the first thing in mind by any stretch of the imagination, but it has now caused a cancellation in the NBA as the Lakers and Hornets are postponing their game due to wildfires set to play later tonight. Second straight day a game that was going to be played in downtown LA has had to be postponed as the Kings and Flames were set to play last night, and they will announce the rescheduled dates at a later time. But, I'm sure the tickets will just be transferred over or whatever. But, have y'all watched any of that? I bring that up mostly just out of my own fascination because first night I was watching,
it's apocalyptic looking.
Yeah, it is. And it started to drift into areas where you have some of your I guess areas that maybe haven't been as threatened before in years past or been worried, warned, whatever. But now it's filtered out in such a way that you're getting all over LA is getting a lot of this wildfire issue. So there is a game that has been affected as of tonight. The Rams sent out a statement to their season ticket holders and fans earlier today, letting people know that their NFC wildcard matchup against the Vikings is still set to be played on Monday night at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, which is, I don't know how much that's being affected because the wind plays into the smoke and all of that, and that's not in the area. That's more in the flatter part of Los Angeles, not up in the hills where you're seeing a lot of this activity. So that is still scheduled to go, but the NFL did say if the game had to be moved, it would be played at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona, home of the Arizona Cardinals. So keep an eye on that. But, yeah, that's been wild to watch the wildfires out there. That's the one thing, that's the most beautiful place in the world in a lot of ways. Very expensive. That's why it's so beautiful, it's so expensive. But, man alive, it's getting torn to pieces, and that is one of those, well, everything's great out here, although people would disagree maybe with the expenses and the politics, depending on where you're from, and just general day-to-day life, I don't know. But the scenery out there is incredible, and to see it getting just burned to the ground the way that it is these past couple of days. I know this is a constant thing for California in a lot of ways, but this
looks like it could just
really
go straight out to the ocean. It could everything's gone, incinerated between where it started and where it might be. Malibu, of course. One of the great things about when we went to California to cover the Cowboys at training camp was that once or twice we would go down Highway 1 down to Malibu and go have something to eat or just go and the campus at Pepperdine is so, it's like mind-boggling beautiful. And some of those places along the road are just, they're gone. And it doesn't look like it's getting any better at all. But
I don't know. It seemed like it was getting better yesterday. I mean, more fires have broken out, but the winds weren't nearly as bad. Well, if you watched it on the very first night, you would have thought it was hurricane-force winds, basically, but with just fire, just being whipped around by the winds, and no way at all to control it. Jim Harbaugh, as the Chargers get ready for the next game, said that the air quality at the complex for the Chargers was 185 yesterday, and anything above 150 is considered unhealthy. So their practice today, they were at their headquarters in Woodland Hills, and it's separated at least by the mountains, so it's not as much of an issue. But, yeah, the air quality was really bad yesterday. So, yeah, prayers out for everybody, thoughts and T's and P's and all that good stuff for the people out in California. But if there is a downside to all that beauty, it is things like wildfires, and in particular these last couple of days it's been really bad. So NBA game canceled tonight, not a surprise. We'll see on the NFL playoff game how that goes.
Yeah. Look, they're in a 50-year drought in California.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
well, they built. It's almost like the old Sam Kinison joke about the Africa and the desert of people not having food.
Yeah.
But it's like you live in the freaking desert. Like that's what Los Angeles is, in the desert. So yeah, they're in a drought, but it's not like it was ever the Amazon rainforest to begin with. It's always been a little bit drought stricken. So yeah, good luck to everybody involved with that. Seen a lot of people who have had their houses burned down. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the celebrities that have been mentioned especially, but bad stuff out there in a very beautiful part of the country. All right, so that leaves us with just a couple of things here. Obviously got the big playoff game tonight, Notre Dame and Penn State. That'll be a 6:30 kickoff on ESPN. So not much more to say about that one, I don't feel like, because we pretty well talked about that and still have a little bit of time left to talk about that the rest of the show. But coming up this weekend, since I won't have another Off the Radar, we do have the full slate of NFL playoffs. Got Texans hosting the Chargers at 3:30 on CBS over on Saturday. Chargers, the road team, slight favorites. Harbaugh's made them interesting in a very short amount of time. Imagine that. He is a very good coach, to say the least. I'm stating the obvious, I know that. But he really has made them more interesting and fun to follow, whereas I could have given a crap about the Chargers for the most part over the last several years, save for maybe a storyline here or there. But he is, along with just the whole mix of quarterbacks in that division right now, are really exciting and fun to watch, except for the Las Vegas Raiders. So there's that game. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, 7 o'clock, also on Saturday. I'll just stop me if there's a game you want to talk about. Baltimore, nearly 10-point favorites in this one.
And I think that's justified. I think they roll them. Pittsburgh, I mean, this is a big rivalry game, but, man, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, they're both playing so well right now. Lamar Jackson is, my MVP as it stands right now. To me, it would be between him and Josh Allen, but yeah, I think they're just playing so good.
That's pretty much the conversation, is those two for it. Then on Sunday, a triple-header, Bills hosting the Broncos. That'll be the noon kickoff. Eagles hosting the Packers, and then the Buccaneers hosting the Commanders, on Sunday night. And then Monday, you've got that game I talked about, the Rams hosting the Vikings, and we'll see if the fires are tampered enough to allow that to still be played at SoFi Stadium. But if not, again, that'll be at the Cardinals Stadium. But we got a couple days to figure all that out. So full 6-game slate coming up in the NFL, and there's a few things off the radar.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. And the Commanders are in the playoffs. And it's hard for me to explain. They won 12 games. And I know there's an extra game, but they won 12 games. It's been since the 91 team that won the Super Bowl that was that good. I think they were 14-2 that year. Lost to Dallas and lost a game at the end that didn't matter against Philadelphia, but I know that I'm not trying to compare them to 91. All right, when we come back, we'll hear from Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network, his thoughts about the semifinal games. He's been interviewing those involved, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, Ohio State, and more. And this is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Fastest growing pizza brand in America. And online, what they have right now, real big pizza deal. They come up with all these different slogans, 30% off. All menu price pizzas. Use the code word of big deal. Order now. And, of course, you can get that, pick it up, have them deliver it to you. They've also got the mega meal deal, only $19.99. It includes a large one-topping pizza, cheesy bread, and Cinesquare. So you get the pizza, you get the bread that's delicious with all sorts of seasoning on it, whatever you want, and then also, of course, the sweetness of Cinesquares. Healthy appetite. They have salads available. I'm not a cauliflower crust guy. My brother Robert used to do that. I'm not. Breadsticks, of course, that are delicious if you want to put even garlic on those. Specialty pizzas, $3 off. 5 locations in Waco. There used to be none. I know that that's the case anytime there's 2, 5, or 6 locations. That was just recently. Now there are 5. Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. It's Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
It's time to start something new at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive into 2025 with incredible deals on our full lineup of Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles. Whether you're conquering the trails in a Jeep Grand Cherokee, towing in style with the Ram Heavy Duty, or cruising the city in a sporty and luxurious Ram 1500, we've got the perfect ride for you. Come see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco, where we make buying cars easy. Allen Samuels, your friend in the car business.
Come by, let's be friends.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
Here we are. We start this 5 o'clock hour. Zach Gelb, normally Wednesdays, but today we appreciate it. Great day, Zach. You've got Penn State, Notre Dame, then Texas, Ohio State, NFL playoffs. Let's start with tonight's first semifinal game. Your thoughts about those two?
I think it's going to be an excellent game, and we're due for an excellent game. The only good game so far in the college football playoff has been Texas and Arizona State, and let's be real, it was a bore for most of the first 3 quarters, and then they got really damn good with about 8 minutes or 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I think both these teams are very similar. Penn State, Notre Dame, really good defenses. Penn State has a better offense than Notre Dame, but Notre Dame has something that Penn State hasn't been able to do, and that's get the monkey off their back in one of these big games. Penn State's here. They are 60 minutes away from going to a national championship game, but in their 2 biggest games of the season so far, they did lose to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, and early in the year they lost to Ohio State. So they got a good draw here when you look back at Boise State and you look back at SMU prior to that, and even though Georgia isn't the Georgia of the past, they're still a heck of a program. We all know that, and Notre Dame was able to beat Georgia. So I think we're getting a 23 kind of 20 game tonight. I'm going to pick Notre Dame because it seems like a lot more people are anticipating Penn State to win the football game tonight.
Zach, I just think that Marcus Freeman, and like he hasn't had as many opportunities in these games as James Franklin has. I just think it's kind of a different thing. James Franklin coaches in these games really tense, and Marcus Freeman seems to coach pretty loose most of the time.
Yeah, doing that up against Georgia definitely does change that perception. You know, there was Northern Illinois. I know that's not a big-time opponent. There was Marshall a few years ago. He lost to Stanford. So he has some blemishes on the resume. But Marcus Freeman, man, I'm really impressed what he was able to do. Remember when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to go to LSU with his Tiger family? We all thought, right, he's doing that because he didn't think he could win at Notre Dame. And he brought Notre Dame back. And look, LSU's watching from home now. And Notre Dame is 2 wins away from winning the national championship. I talked to Manti Te'o on my show earlier in the week. And remember, he played for Brian Kelly, obviously. And Manti said there's a difference between Marcus Freeman and Brian Kelly. And a big part of it is the leadership. Like, anyone could draw plays, X's and O's, but can you galvanize and bring a team together was basically his point. And he thinks that Marcus Freeman is a better leader than Brian Kelly, was pretty much what he was telling me.
Zach, this is a very blue blood heavy Final Four. Have you seen any uptick in the general national conversation surrounding the college football national championship as a result? Has it been negligible? Just your thoughts from your seat up there in the Northeast where pro sports is more so king.
Yeah, so it's interesting to try to see if there's an uptick yet. I think we'll know more so after this weekend, of the Thursday and Friday stretch, just because of the fact the first two rounds have basically been what the semifinal used to be. Because most of those years, the semifinals have been blowouts in a 4-team format. So I think that got out of the system, and now we're at the stage where we usually are. And if we get two monster games on Thursday and Friday, I think there's going to be a lot of buzz. But college football, I felt it this way. I don't know if other people will feel this way living in the Northeast. I think it's been a lot more entertaining and a lot more engaging and a lot more fun and compelling this year than the NFL storylines, with the newness of the 12-team format, and then also how many teams we thought were the team and then fell down. And look, you don't even have a team that had a bye that is remaining here. And I get it because it's the format with Boise State and Arizona State, but Oregon getting blown out. You see Georgia fall to Notre Dame. So I think you get a better understanding on how successful the playoff actually was after what we see here in the semifinal.
Do you think that Dan Lanning, first of all, he was knocked down flat out? That was unbelievable. Ohio State crushed him. That sometimes can send a program into a spiral, no matter how much money, no matter how good they are. They had the quarterback they wanted. That was awful. And you wonder, could that send them into a spiral?
I don't think so. And here's why. Will they win a national championship game? I think Dan Lanning is capable of it. I can't sit here and tell you it's 1,000% going to happen, but it's weird how you look back on the Oregon season. Like, if I would have told you before the start of the year, they won the Big Ten championship in their inaugural season, you would say, okay, that's successful. But then you followed up with, in their first playoff game, they got smacked by Ohio State, who they beat earlier in the year. It was just the wrong opponent. I don't think it mattered who you put out there in front of Ohio State the other week. They were coming to kick your ass, and they were coming to take names and beat you up pretty good. So I would be curious by the response, but they've done such a good job in recruiting with name, image, and likeness and the transfer portal the last few years. It was a good step for Oregon this year in the Big Ten, but now it was championship or bust when you're the 1 seed, don't get me wrong, but now it's really championship or bust for the next few seasons.
What do you make of Texas and Ohio State? I know Ohio State's a 6-point favorite. Texas is very rarely a 6-point dog in anything. No matter the season, even if they're struggling, they're not a 6-point dog. Part of me thinks that that's too big of a spread because Texas is just kind of wily like that. But like you said before, Ohio State was coming to play once the playoffs started.
I kind of think the spread is begging you to take Ohio State. I look at that spread, I go, Ohio State just played like that. Texas struggled with Arizona State. Only 6.5 points the way the Ohio State team played. So the spread could actually favor Texas, and maybe this game ends up being closer than what a lot of people think, because I believe everyone now believes, or most people believe, that Ohio State's winning it all. But it's fascinating. I was talking about this today. You look at the 4 quarterbacks remaining. Mm-hmm. You look at the 4 head coaches that are remaining. Who do you have the most confidence in? Quarterback-wise, I don't think Quinn Ewers is the greatest quarterback in the world, but I think he's better than Riley Leonard. I think he's better than Will Howard. And even though Drew Allard may have a higher ceiling, there's inconsistencies with Drew Allard. Quinn Ewers is just a good, solid quarterback. I look at the coaches. I like Marcus Freeman a lot. James Franklin's got to win a big game. Ryan Day, just a month ago, everyone wanted him fired. And I look at Steve Sarkisian. He's done a very impressive job at Texas, right? Had them win the Big 12 last year, brought them back. And then the first year in the SEC, the big bad SEC, he's in the SEC championship game and now is the only SEC team remaining in the college football playoffs. So it's weird when all we do right from afar is talk coaches and quarterbacks, coaches and quarterbacks. I say that all the time on a Monday off a big football weekend. I know I'm leading with either a coach or a quarterback. I can make the case that the coach and quarterback that I have the most confidence in is Sark and Quinn Ewers, but here I'm not going to pick Texas to beat Ohio State coming up tomorrow night.
Are you hearing many people that are picking Texas? Man, it seems like it's just the Ohio State is like the team right now. It feels like, in every direction I look, people are just all in on them at the moment.
And I'm picking Ohio State, to be clear. But the more and more I hear about the predictions in this one going to the game, it's like Texas is South Harvard Institute of Technology. I'm like, this is still Texas, folks, for crying out loud. This is still Texas. Last time I checked, they beat Michigan earlier in the year. Ohio State did not beat Michigan. But you look at that Michigan game for Ohio State, it got them. It's crazy that they needed it. But what they did up against Tennessee, just quickly dispose of them. What they did up against Oregon, quickly dispose of them. It is, yes, you put a gun to my head right now and say who wins it all, even though I'm not a huge fan of Ryan Day. That's been well documented. It would be tough to not pick the Buckeyes.
I'm telling you now, if this narrative continues that Ohio State's the dominant team or whatever, they will not win tomorrow night. It's something that Texas...
Well, that's the narrative. Then you're picking Texas.
Yeah, Texas cherishes, I think. There have been times in the past, the USC game in 2005. I know that was a special team with Vince Young, but it seemed like even back when they've had that 10-year drought of just average, that they still won games that were the ones that they were supposed to have no chance. This is what they kind of feed off of.
And I'm going to the national championship game. I'll tell you this. If I have to sit there and watch a Ryan Day, James Franklin national championship
Oh, my gosh.
for me, that will be hell. That would be the worst place you could put Zach Gelb in if it is Ohio State, Penn State with Ryan Day or James Franklin, and one of those guys are winning a national championship. I need one of those schools to go down so that I could become the biggest fan of whoever is not remaining between Ohio State and Penn State after this weekend.
I text you on the day that they both lost, and I was like, it's a rough day for your hit list. Like, it was Dabo, Ryan Day, Penn State all took an L, and then like a week later, everything's fine for them. Everything's fine. Like, that's
you jinxed it. You were like Jonathan Taylor this year. Before he got in the end zone, you were celebrating and you dropped the football. So congratulations, you messed it up.
I did. I have a couple different NFL questions for you later on, but. If you had to push your money in the middle of the table, where is Carson Beck playing next year?
I guess Miami, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think this really matters, but I'm sure Smokey is not aware of this. Let me just preface it by that. His girlfriend is one of the Cavender twins, out of eligibility. But she's spent her college career at Miami, so he's got to be familiar with the program somewhat. But it would be like the Cam Ward thing, where I don't think Carson Beck is as good as Cam Ward. But Cam Ward last year declared for the draft, then put his name in the transfer portal, and then ended up at Miami. So I could see Carson Beck going to Miami, but I do not think and I know it changed today, at least from the reporting. I thought it was a mistake a few weeks ago when he said he was going to the NFL draft.
What is she doing now, Cavender?
She's still playing. Last year of eligibility.
Oh, I did
back.
not. Okay, all right. Well, then it all does make a lot of sense. As you
and
mentioned.
Smokey, a huge Instagram and TikTok star, the two of them.
Yeah, no, I knew that. I did know that.
He's big on TikTok. He does all the dances. I'm
like those meteorologists now on TikTok that apparently are now the go-to people for weather that don't even have a degree in meteorology. But that's okay.
Well, let's be real. Anyone that's giving out the weather, it's the best job that you could get. Yeah, you could be wrong all the time. You still get paid,
and you still get paid. By the way,
if the odds makers in Vegas had the same record as weathermen, they'd get their legs broken. Bottom line. Bottom line.
They would. Yeah. Zach, three of us, Garrett produces the show. Craig and I, we're lifelong Washington fans, NFL.
Really?
Yes, we are. I was back.
Well, nice to see you guys return to being football fans. It's
nice that we didn't know what the playoffs were, so this is a new experience for us. Tell us about what you think about what they have the road game against Tampa. I love what Mayfield, and that's a team that's played really well, at times explosive. Your thoughts about Washington with what Dan Quinn's done with Jaden Daniels?
I think it's the biggest question mark game of the weekend. I think the Commanders, I will pick them to win the game, but I love watching Baker Mayfield play. I love watching Bucky Irving. I love watching Mike Evans. That's a real fun team that plays with a lot of guts and has a lot of moxie, just like the quarterback in Baker Mayfield. But I'm rooting for the story of the Commanders in this one. This franchise, because of that guy that owned that team and Daniel Snyder, were an absolute embarrassment. The fan base, there was just apathy. They all went away, and they had hope come back to them. And it's one thing, right, when Josh Harris was running your team last year, but when you get a quarterback, a franchise quarterback in Jaden Daniels, that just brings excitement and washes away so many years of pain. So I do believe, because of the Jaden Daniels train, that the Commanders are going to find a way to just outscore Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
All right, Zach, of the 6 open head coaching jobs, and we don't know if there'll be a 7th with Jerry and Mike McCarthy. I don't think it's leaning that way right now. But which one would you want the least?
Saints.
Really?
I just don't. What's the sell job on the Saints? You're not horrible, but you're nowhere close to being good. And I know the division isn't impossible. It's either the Saints or the Raiders to answer that question. But what the Raiders did today is they put lipstick on a pig. That job is disgusting. It is not a good job right now, but some candidates could be ooh and ahhed by Tom Brady. And they basically just said to all the coaching candidates out there, hey, there's a lot of jobs here. Saints, you got Mickey Loomis. Now, the Bears, you got Ryan Poles. The Patriots, you got Elliott Wolf. The Jaguars, you got Trent Baalke. We're going to get rid of our GM, and we're basically going to empower the coach to have whoever he wants being the GM. So that's the difference maker for me, why I think the Saints is the ugliest job out there, and just slightly over the Raiders.
Why not the Jets?
So young roster. They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a long-term quarterback. I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be back there, even if he is. I don't think that's a good thing for the Jets next year. But you got Quinnen Williams, you got Sauce Gardner, you got Garrett Wilson. There are some young pieces there with the Jets.
The Belichick thing, no one wanted him, it appears, and then all of a sudden now they do. He's not going to be able to. He can't.
He could.
Yeah, okay.
He did it to the Jets.
No, you're right.
So I don't think he will. But what's not to say after 1 year? Let's say he gets 7-8 wins at UNC. Right? People are like, oh, this is good. And then he goes, I'm going to go to the NFL, and Steven Belichick, my son, is going to take over as the head coach.
Yeah, somebody put that up in the chat room earlier. And, of course, that's been out there, too. Set him up, put it on a platter, and then go back to where you love the NFL to go get it one more ring without. Although it wouldn't be without Brady, right? If he goes to Vegas, it would be with Brady kind of as one of the guys.
Yeah, so that's the thing, too, is that he could, if he wants to set this up where Steven gets the job, he could do so. Because we know how quickly now, right, it moves in college football because of the transfer portal. So if he waits until right this time, January, end of January, to take a job, then UNC, even if it's only for a year, may have no other choice but to put Steve Belichick as the head coach if he does that a year from now. Because usually these coaches in college, it's November, it's December that these hires are made. If you leave, let's say Belichick today came to agreement next year on January 9th to be the next head football coach of, let's just throw out the Raiders for the sake of doing it for this conversation. Well, like, what else is UNC going to do at this rate?
Yeah, that's a great point. Hey, man, be good to talk to you. Hopefully you will not get, for your sake, Penn State, Ohio State, Ryan Day, James Franklin in the national championship game.
It's going to be some dark days if that's the case. It's going to be a lonely time to be Zach Gelb. It's going to be hopeless.
I love it. Thank you, Zach Gelb, Infinity Sports Network, with us. Normally Wednesdays around 5. He's been with us throughout the entire football season. And today, this week on Thursday, he had an invitation to go to an event last night. So he's with us today. Around the corner, Mickey Spagnola. Speaking of which, one of the teams that still has a head coach, and that clock is January 14th with Mike McCarthy. Apparently, Jerry said no to the Bears talking to him. Is he playing mind games? Is he just doing it right, taking his time, making sure? Have they even talked to anybody else, or would we know that? That's next. Mickey Spagnola. This is 365 Sports. Pioneer Steel and Pipe. Their location east of I-35 on Highway 6 and Loop 340. Big, huge, massive. It's been just over 2 years now, their facility, after so many years when they opened the doors back in 1943, just really over, not far from McLean Stadium when it was just nothing. And now the company was always efficient, always professional, always had great equipment and product that you need to build whatever it is, building, homes, real estate, commercial. And now they just have more room for it, more products. The showroom, 2,500 square feet of, I think I was told there's like 1,000 new pieces of product that they have they can show off for you. If you build something, you probably know about them. If you don't, you need to. Pioneer's doing pipes since 1943, pioneerboys.com.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
365 Sports on this Thursday, and just over an hour and a half or so away from the kickoff, Penn State and Notre Dame. If, in fact, you could trade one of these four schools, and there's that debate about Penn State blue blood, man, it's hard for me to say they're not, but there are some that argue that they're not. Who would you replace them with to make it the ultimate four teams?
Alabama.
Alabama?
Yeah.
Would it be Michigan?
Yeah.
Michigan. there's like three teams you could mention. Those are two of them.
Yeah.
Oklahoma
would be another one, and there might be maybe one or two others, but obviously with Oklahoma this year, Michigan this year, they were never a part of the conversation at all. Although they almost had a part of the conversation because they almost derailed Ohio State. And if it wasn't the 12 teams, there would be a lot of teams that would never have been a part of this college football playoff, which to me is the exciting thing about the college football playoff. And I hope that they remember that when they make the tweaks and changes to it moving forward.
I just, I see, I'm one who's guilty of bringing up the TV ratings starting a couple years ago. And I got real into the weeds on TV ratings during all the realignment, Pac-12, Big 12, and that whole situation. But yeah, I don't think this playoff's good because it ended up with four popular teams. But I see that sentiment a lot of this is going to get great ratings. And I'm like, I don't give an S about the TV ratings. I mean, as a fan.
ESPN does.
ESPN does. And then they put out their graphic and everybody celebrates it. And I understand why it's good. If you are a Oklahoma State fan, it's a big deal if you pulled $3 million on ESPN2 for your matchup for UCF or whatever. I understand why those things are important, but when it's a constant thing, that's not why I'm a college football fan. It's for the TV ratings and for me to go, I need this team to win so that in 5 years they get this new contract, maybe that gets them another $5 million, maybe. I just don't watch it that way. So for me, it's just neat that it ended that way, but I definitely wasn't rooting for let's get the most popular teams imaginable. That's what I want to see, or else I'm not interested. If it would have been Boise State and Arizona State, I would be just as fired up for it. I honestly would be, because Ashton Genty has me as interested in Boise State as being as interested in a Georgia or somebody else that we've seen. With Arizona State, like, how could you not be interested in them, especially after what you watched against Texas? So I think the playoff would have been great regardless, but it definitely played right into the hands of the TV executives and the people who obsess over the money side of it or the blue blood side of it. You got exactly what you wanted.
There's this weird courting of the fringe of sports fans. If you're a sports fan, you're going to watch the championships and the playoffs of most leagues.
Right.
Like, if you're a fan of that, if you're whatever you're a fan of, if you're a football fan, you're probably watching the playoffs. Now, if you're somewhat casual and you're not going to watch, if you're not going to watch Boise State versus UNLV, even though that was a really good game, you're still going to watch the playoffs, no matter who's in it. They're courting this fringe of people who may turn on because, like, ooh, we haven't seen Ohio State and Texas.
Yes.
But, like, okay, cash your lottery. You hit a scratcher. Good job. Cash it and then hope you hit another one next year. But it could always be different. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, but it played, at least this first year, it played right into the hands. The only thing that could have been different was Alabama getting in. Like, that's the only other thing you would have changed if you're the head of ESPN. Like, that's the only thing you would have maybe, like, I don't even know, for Penn State would have been who you would have even traded them out for, which that's probably negligible difference anyways, because Penn State's got a pretty massive fan base. But it wasn't that far away from being in Arizona State, throwing this whole thing for a loop. And I'm just curious in the future with the way everything's set up. I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but how many teams that aren't those same teams going to be able to have the ability financially, physically, like, to be able to make it all the way to this next point? Arizona State showed they could get there, almost. They could almost get there. What could they have done beyond that point? We don't know. But, like, are we in store now for where it's just blue blood central from here on out because of the way they've set the table? Or is there going to be an Arizona State that throws it for a loop? I hope to God there's an Arizona State every once in a while. But I do get that for this year, this is not even just for TV executives, but, like, let's bring as many new college football fans into the fold as we possibly can. How many casuals or however you want to label them, you couldn't have drawn it up any better than what you got.
Absolutely. And look,
but isn't that always the case with blue bloods in the national team? But TCU, was it out? Different?
We ignore that they even won a playoff game because it doesn't fit the narrative. Like, they didn't belong. They beat Michigan.
I think you'll see it be a lot like the basketball tournament. Every so often, you're going to have a James
George Mason.
George Mason. I said James Mason. He's an actor.
Valpo.
You're going to have those things where St. Peter's gets to the final. Like, you're going to have those things, and that's great. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's UConn and Duke and UNC and KU and those teams.
It is.
Like, they get there, but the journey is more fun because you can turn on and go, oh my God. Did Bucknell just win that game?
The best part of the NCAA men's tournament is Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, or did St. Peter's just beat John Calipari?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, that's the part of it. Why we don't want that same kind of feeling in football, I don't understand.
Well, because we've never seen it open.
But we've never seen it open. But, I don't know, like, I guess, like, if you had a really good steak in a place, and then you'd be like, well, I only want to have that steak in that place. Why would you not want to have good steak all the time, no matter where you are?
Because you're too good. You feel like people that don't make whatever don't make good steak.
But you would be seeking out every which way you could get to get that steak, right? That, to me, that's how it is. Like, all right, look, I love the NCAA tournament. I love the College World Series because you really never know what's going to happen. A Stony Brook can win out of the blue, and those things can happen. Why we don't want it for football compared to every other sport that we have is
I think at Arizona State won that you'd have a lot of people that would be going crazy over Arizona State right now, rooting for them to go all the way. But
they would be that team,
Unfortunately, that didn't work out that way. So, I mean, like, I totally get the appeal of having the biggest brands, but I also get the appeal of a Cinderella, and we didn't have a Cinderella in this very first expanded playoff. But will we, or will it be a trend of, like, survival of the fittest, and the fittest are the ones that make the most money and have the biggest history and the biggest – whatever in every category. This year, the small sample size it's going to be the biggest and the best are still the ones that rise at the top. But we weren't far off from that being a different story. So we'll have to let this thing play out over the coming years. Although as far as the 12 team, like, we're only going to get that for one more year. Like, that's pretty obvious at this point. So we're going to have 2-year sample size before it changes because it's not going to stay at 12.
No, but okay, then I want to ask this question. Did what we've seen this year and who we have as 4, but is there enough for the SEC after what they've done this year in the college football playoff to still, because they are the SEC, the Big Ten has had a better postseason, to be able to still say, we want this state, it's ours?
Are you kidding? They only are
No,
not.
I'm just asking.
They just didn't want to be there, or they, didn't get the right team. Or there's. I think the reaction from those hardcores is you're never going to be able to convince them that they're not the greatest thing that ever has walked the earth. And so, for that part of the audience, that's just never going to change. But I think for most people, you see that there are some cracks in the armor, and it's not this unbeatable juggernaut that runs the sport and nobody can touch them. No, I think that's the narrative that's been put in place by TV networks for a very long time. So 20-year-olds, that's all they ever know.
Yeah.
And all they've ever seen is those teams win championships. So I understand why they're the way that they are. It's the 30s and the 40-year-olds that still feel that way. It's like, do you not remember Nebraska and Florida State and Miami and all these programs that were doing it big just a few years before this run started? But, yeah, I think there's a generation that's been sort of programmed, and rightfully so, because that's all they've ever seen is this one conference basically run everything.
Yeah, for 17 to 20 years. Mickey Spagnola joins us, DallasCowboys.com. Their season is over. The playoffs begin, of course, this weekend. There are 6 head coaching jobs open in the NFL, and there's the thought about maybe Dallas enters that picture. Mickey, thank you, sir. How is the weather where you are? Are you home? Are you at the office? Where are you?
No, they shut down the office today. They took preventive measures yesterday to say probably stay home today. We got about, 4 inches or so.
What?
And it looks like it's sleeting, raining now. But the prediction is around 7 to midnight, probably another 3 or 4 inches.
Well, the key is it's kind of slush combined.
Yeah.
But the key is how cold does it get tonight, overnight, that makes it treacherous in the morning?
Although I went out for about a half-hour walk in it, I had to act like I was a kid again.
You jumped in the snow?
Yeah, I didn't do any snow angels, but I took a walk down the street.
Good for you. Good for you.
Mickey, obviously the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy are in negotiations right now of trying to figure out what the future is. Do you get the feeling that this is, it's not a formality. That if it was a formality, it would have probably already been done before this period. But do you get the feeling that the more of the interest is to keep the band together than to reboot the system?
It seems that way. If you look at what both sides have been saying after the game, when Mike McCarthy was asked about other teams having interest in him, did you want to come back? And he said, absolutely. And then kind of went into this long explanation of how he builds foundations and how he builds winners. And I don't think Jerry's said anything disparaging about it. So to me, when we say negotiations, what do you think that brings it to? Money.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I thought you were asking me how much money.
Well, I don't know that, but that's probably what they're negotiating right now.
He's making he made 4.5 over the contract. As what leverage does he have to ask for more? All that that's kind of the weird thing here too, right? Where he's got leverage in that 3, 12, and 5 seasons in a row, bookended by Dak injury seasons that weren't good and they didn't make the playoffs. But he also has the hey, the guy that you just gave $60 million to, in both of my bad seasons, he didn't play most of the year.
Well, why do you think the Bears asked for permission to talk to Mike McCarthy when they've got a list of 9 guys they're lined up to talk to and there's no hurry, right?
Yeah.
Well, it was his agent. He's trying to poke the Cowboys, right? So he calls the Bears and said, hey, why don't you do me a favor? At some point I did you one and you never know when you need another. Why don't you ask the Cowboys permission to talk to Mike? And I think they did, right? And the Cowboys, answered the way you thought of was, no way. We've got till January 14th to try to knock this thing out. So, I don't know if the weather got in the way of anything today, tomorrow. But they got until Tuesday to try to knock something out before he can go and see what the market value is. But I imagine his agent knows what the market value is, right? You can't talk to the coach, but you sure can talk to the agent. Same thing that happened with Zeke. He didn't just wake up and say, oh, why don't you release me and see if I can hook up with another team that's in the playoffs? No, his agent did the back work and, called around and said, hey, if anybody's got any, running back problems and you need a veteran guy in an emergency situation, my guy's willing to sign to the practice squad and you can elevate him if you want. Well, the Chargers, looking at their running back situation said, yeah, maybe we'll buy an insurance plan here. You only got to pay him $20,000 a week if he doesn't get elevated. And they've got somebody sitting there they can use. So to me, we call this the free agency period. It's the agent period. This is where they earn their money. This is when they go to work.
Is there any chance, and I kind of have an idea what you're going to say, Jerry loves him attention, right? I mean, he doesn't have to even do anything. He gets attention. Is there any of this where he wants to milk this as long as he can because of the deadline, but also he kind of enjoys still being right there front and center, and his team is not playing this weekend or next?
If that was the case, then the Dallas Morning News refuted that notion because there was not a Cowboy story in my edition of the newspaper this morning.
Oh, okay.
And that's a rarity, right? I know it's the off season. I know there's a game here tomorrow night and there's snow and, whatever else you want to come up with in the sports section. But they didn't make it. No, I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think it has to do with money. And you got, there's no salary cap for the coaches. So, whatever it takes. But I'm sure his agent, Don Yee, kind of knows what the market value is and probably trying to milk it.
He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He is 15th, as far as I know, on salaries in the NFL. There's 32 teams. Is he underpaid?
It's hard for me to say that. I mean, when they hired him and signed him to a contract, he didn't have a job, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And I don't know if, there was a bunch of people trying to sign him at that time also. Now, this time it might be a different story because he has had a very good history developing quarterbacks. Now, the quarterbacks he had were pretty good to start with, right? If you look around. But again, with that many teams out there, and usually, if you look at the teams that need a head coach, they probably need a quarterback too, right?
I mean, except for the Bears and Patriots, yeah.
And they were young guys that
they're
need
just
developing, right?
Yeah.
So, and he's done a pretty good job of that.
The Jaguars don't need one, but yeah.
Some sort of market value. There's a direct correlation to guys that are good coaches and guys that also have good quarterbacks. Think about what's in the playoffs right now. All 14 teams. I went back and looked, with the exception of Pittsburgh, because Russell Wilson wasn't ready to start the season until I think they were 5 games in. So he started the last 11 games, played 100% of the snaps. The most games any of the teams in the playoffs, their starting quarterbacks missed was 2. So I think having your quarterback has a lot to do with you being able to have success in the NFL.
Look, I think a lot of times, Mickey, the Cowboys' problems and issues are not head coach. Like, I don't think, even with Jason Garrett, I don't know if it was really so much head coach based as they could never get the roster, the right thing they needed to beat the team that had the potion that stopped them. With the last couple, it's been San Francisco, right? They just didn't have the roster for that. It wasn't about the coaching or anything like that. Like, I don't think the coaching was bad. It was the roster, which is not really on the coach. It's on the front office people. And that, I think, is where the rub is. And right now they're in a little bit of salary cap jail. So the roster maneuvering has to get even more clever this offseason for Mike McCarthy or whoever takes over.
Well, I don't know
job.
how you can be clever when you're against the salary cap.
They've got they're going to have to really hit on some draft picks, aren't they?
Right, which they sort of did this year until a couple of them got hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Second round pick, Marshawn Nealon. He looked like he was going to be a pretty good player, and then he got injured. Carson started off the season pretty well. He got an injury, and then he lost his confidence. Maris Leofau was pretty good this year. Last year, DeMarvion Overshone got hurt. He was pretty good again until he got hurt. So, they've done a pretty good job with the draft. Now, I know, probably Tyler Guyton didn't come around as fast as you would have liked, but there's some talent there. He just needs to play some football. So from a drafting standpoint, they've done pretty well. So I don't know about the roster thing because if you look at the losses to San Francisco, I mean, they were kind of close in the playoffs. They just didn't, hit the big play or, make the play they needed to make during the game. And San Francisco was pretty good, so they might have been a little bit better. God forbid if that's the excuse for not getting further. You played a team that was better than you, and you got to keep developing it. So, yeah, I don't know if I think the front office did as well as they could do, bringing in free agents. Eric Kendrick's pretty good find this year, right?
Yeah. No,
okay.
I really.
So I don't know, what they should have done within the structure of the salary cap.
No, my point about the roster is it's been good, but not great, like they want it to be or need it to be. And it's just because of they've run into they couldn't stop the run against San Francisco, and then Pollard gets hurt, and it's kind of on Dak to kind of make all this happen, and they were playing a really good defense. So I think sometimes things are blown out of proportion as to what the real issues are with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Look at the injuries they suffered this year. I don't think Mike McCarthy had anything to do with that. When you miss at some point during the season 7 Pro Bowl players, and you conclude an 8th, Micah Parsons didn't go on injured reserve, but he missed 4 games. He gets back, and all of a sudden it looked like the defense knew what it was doing. So, and last year, you say what you want about the defense, and everybody attributes to Dan Quinn doing a really good job, but he was in charge of that defense that against very good teams couldn't stop the run.
No, they did. They eventually broke down. And Zimmer, it seemed like they made a nice run at the end with what he had remaining and getting a couple of the guys from the cavalry back. Mickey, last thing, and we do appreciate you as always, and be careful up there. If in
I
fact,
ain't going anywhere.
Okay, then that's nice. If in fact, by the way, nice paint job and everything in the background. Looks like that's very spiffy looking.
Well, it's my bookcase and the TV's up and the shutters
is that your man cave?
Like that, but
no, they aren't. Okay. Yeah. If not McCarthy, then is there, in your opinion, from your perspective, a wish list at all?
I've seen people come up with all these names. Here's my deal. I don't want a guy that's a coordinator that has never been a head coach, because then I don't know if he's a head coach. Just because you can call plays or can call defense doesn't mean you can get up there in front of 70 players and hold the attention of the room. You got to have kind of a magnetic personality. I mean, look what Harbaugh's done. Is he an offensive guy or defensive guy? I don't know. Is he one or the other? But he's a head coach. And so if I was looking for a replacement, I want a head coach. And if that means dipping into college, so be it. But I don't want somebody training with me when I've got big salaries for 3 or 4 guys right? And I need to start winning now. I don't need somebody to come in here and develop from scratch. You know, everybody wants to look at the guys at Detroit. I don't know anything about Ben Johnson other than, you know, he coordinates a really good offense. Now, I have a history with Aaron Glenn when he was here. I think he's a good coach, and I think he's got a personality that could be a head coach. But you don't know that. And if you bring somebody else in, who's he bringing with him? Because if McCarthy's not here, basically the play caller, offensive coordinator is not here. So, you know, you got to find out what that guy wants. You know, I made a off-the-cuff remark when somebody asked me, well, who do you want as head coach? And I was being a smartass, and I said Nick Saban. And everybody goes, oh, and I'm going, that's the kind of guy I want. I want a CEO, not a coordinator that's learning to be a head coach. So Mickey, if you got somebody, let me know.
Yeah. Look, all the people that I would like, I'm kind of with you on that. Like if there's a coordinator out there, if Ben Johnson's the next dude and he turns into that, that's fine. But I'm kind of with you. If it's not Mike McCarthy, there's a list of guys that I would want. All of them have other jobs. Like they all have other jobs. So again, like there's not somebody sitting out there that's not coaching right now that, as someone I would say like, oh, this guy's definitely better than McCarthy. I mean, if McCarthy's not the guy, then I want someone like Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan. Like I want those guys who are accomplished. They're not getting them.
Yeah,
they have jobs.
They have jobs. Yeah.
Well, Paul, there's one out there. If you just listen to him, Rex Ryan.
Yeah. He's in. He wants that Jets job though, right? That's that's where he wants to be.
He's the best guy for it if you just listen to him.
Yeah. I kind of miss his personality, and yet again, I don't. Mickey, last thing on McCarthy. If, in fact, he comes back, whose terms will it be under? His or Jerry's?
Oh, in regards to how much he makes?
Is he going to continue to be the play caller, or will he be a CEO?
I think he wants to be a play caller. I don't think there was a problem with the play caller. I know everybody looks at that. But, you know, with a backup quarterback, Cooper Rush, they went 4-4. I would imagine there would be a lot of teams in the NFL that had to play their backup quarterback 8 games. They would love to go 500. You know, was it the play caller that did a really good job during that stretch? Now, I know early in the season they struggled. CeeDee Lamb wasn't ready to play. They were learning a new defense. They had a couple close calls that they, you know, didn't win. I mean, if you think about it, you know, but they played, I want to say 7-8 games against teams that are in the playoffs. So it wasn't like they had an easy schedule. And next year's schedule, I don't know if you guys have looked at it, it gets even more difficult. They've got 10 games against teams that are in the playoffs this year. And if you look at it, the NFC East, well, there's 4
There's 4 right there. Yeah.
Okay. And then they got to play the NFC North. That's 3 more because 3 of the 4 teams are in the playoffs. And they got to play the AFC West. 3 of the 4 teams are in the playoffs. So it's not going to get any easier.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens sometimes, that algorithm, so to speak, or how it can be like, man, you get a pretty good break, and then sometimes it can – and the NFL, sometimes you don't know from year to year, but it seems like it's a little bit more stable. Although, another year where 4 teams who made the playoffs the year before are not in the playoffs this year. Now, there are more teams, but that streak is crazy how long that goes back. I don't know if it's 25 or 30 years, but – every year, 4, and it's been 5 or 6, don't make the playoffs from the year before. And I guess that's the parity.
Who are the new ones this year? Denver?
Washington,
the Chargers?
The Chargers, Denver. There's another team. I have a reminder in my calendar that pops off.
Maybe Minnesota?
Vikings, Paul, the Vikings.
Did they come out of the blue?
Yeah, they had a really high draft pick. Remember they drafted J.J. McCarthy.
That's right. So there are 4 that got in, and next year they'll be somehow or another, even the ones you might think, oh, no, they'll get in. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that NFC North with Lions, Vikings, Packers. Woo! And then who knows if the Bears, whoever gets to be their head coach, 3 teams that won 11, 14, and 15 games in this season. Well, heck, the Cowboys division had a 14-game winner and a 12-game winner, right, Craig and Garrett? Because the Washington
yes, sir,
was 12-5. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5. Waco Custom Marketplace, it started their business back in 53 when David Bauer and the family began a meat business, a meat packing business. And then back in 2014, I remember when Brian Bauer, who runs it now, called me and said, hey, we're going to start an actual like grocery store, butcher shop, bakery. That was back in 2014, Waco Custom Meats, seafood right down the street, and they've done a great job. Quality beef, pork, poultry, and obviously they have, as I said, the butcher shop. When you walk in the door, there's a couple of rows of where you have all sorts of knickknacks, canned goods, whatever you need. And then in the back corner, along with other places, seasonings, sauces, and more, marinades. To the right, there's the, you have where you can get desserts and sweets and cakes and candies and so much more you check out there. To the right of that, cold beer and wine. To the left, there's a lobster tank. And then there's the butcher shop with seafood, and then there's pork, poultry, and in the very back, you get all your cuts of steak that you want, from ribeyes, tomahawk ribeyes, and more, and if you want just regular ground beef. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store, and there's a coffee shop where you can get coffee when you want, drive-through to get that in the morning or whenever you want. 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Check out my go-to polo from Flag and Anthem. It's everything you want in a golf polo, but you can wear it at a dinner, to a barbecue, whatever your plans are. It's extremely soft, super comfortable. Check it out, flagandanthem.com.
If your business is like most, you need things done quickly. But if you're still tying your critical applications together on multiple shared public networks, you've probably been feeling the slowdown. And that's no good for business. A private UPN fiber network can get you and your business moving at the speed of light. Whatever you need, we can build it. Internet, Metro Ethernet, Waves, dark fiber. We deliver custom private networks and are focused on business customers only. Our next generation 100% fiber optic infrastructure offers you low latency and ultra scalable bandwidth with speeds up to 100 gigabit to run your critical applications. Your connection won't be limiting your performance anymore. It's diverse and scalable, so it can grow and change as your business grows and changes. And with a secure carrier-grade private network, you'll have all the reliability you need. Contact UPN today to learn more. Fast just got faster.
That's far. So much forgiveness. Wait, did you say forgiveness like far, or forgiveness like forgiveness? Forgiveness. 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 I'm hearing far. Forgiveness. Like forgiveness. Forgiveness? Forgiveness. I'm still hearing far, but whatever.
Introducing Stealth 2 with more carbon for more forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Just hit it.
Get ready for epic savings at Best Buy. Right now, you can save up to $700 on select Alienware and Dell gaming products. Perfect for leveling up your gaming experience. Plus, grab the latest Android Google Pixel at an unbeatable price. Don't miss these incredible deals. Shop now at bestbuy.com and upgrade your tech today.
for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. These are the top 5 hardest coaches to fire. Now look, we're through the regular season into the postseason, but it's never too early to start talking about coaches who might be difficult to fire if they don't improve their season this next year. Number 5, Kalen DeBoer. Alabama fans have been ridiculously spoiled. They've had the greatest coach of all time for 17 years. Now they get Kalen DeBoer, who's a great coach. He really is a fantastic coach. They go 9-3 in the regular season and lose the bowl game. So now they see how the other half lives, and they don't like it. But it would be really hard to fire him, given that he's probably got a large buyout, which I'm sorry I did not look up. But also, give this dude some time. Give him a minute. He can't just be Saban overnight. And guess what, Alabama? Nobody's going to be Saban again. He left due in large part because the rules changed. So no one can be him again. Just appreciate the fact that you had the one true greatest football coach of all time that will probably never be equaled, and move on and live like the rest of us peasants. That's all you have to do. I know it's hard, but things are still going to be good in Tuscaloosa. Number 4, Mark Stoops. Here's the problem if you're Kentucky. You're an SEC job, so you can theoretically attract good SEC-type coaches. However, really none of them have been successful like Mark Stoops has there. So yes, he had a bad year this year at 4-8, but most of his tenure has been really good years. So if he improves even slightly, you kind of have to stick with him because historically your program just hasn't been that good. And nobody's really been that successful. And this guy's been really successful there and has a chance to maybe do something if he can build some momentum. Number 3, Mike Gundy. Now look, he's in a win or you're done situation. So I know a lot of people in Stillwater don't think it'll be that hard to fire. But he's also the greatest coach in the history of your school, and he's been there a long time, and he played there, and he's kind of synonymous with the program. So firing him will still be really hard. So even if Oklahoma State does not bounce back, and he's got a whale of a job to do, he's got to replace almost the whole roster. He's got to find a quarterback that can actually perform for him. He's got to replace Ollie Gordon. He's got to replace 3 really good wide receivers. He's got to replace a defense that was bad, but he can't afford to let them get any worse. He's got a huge job ahead of him. If anybody can pull it off, it's probably Mike Gundy. But there's tension there. But even if there's tension, it's still going to be hard to scapegoat Mike Gundy completely because he is a legend at Oklahoma State. Number 2, Brian Kelly. This one's not so hard about the record or whatever, but he came in to help them win a national championship. His 3 predecessors all won national championships. Administratively, they're better, but they're not better on the field. And some things that they were great at constantly, defensive back, linebacker, defensive tackle, offensive line, have slipped under his administration. I'm not letting Garrett talk here because he's going to swear. But, and I've never sworn on the show before, ever. I didn't drop the F-bomb just 2 weeks ago. But Brian Kelly, also, here's the reason he's hard to fire. $60 million buyout in a state-run institution that has not always been the best with money. So, for better or worse, for a couple more years, LSU stuck with Brian Kelly. And the same thing goes for our number 1, Lincoln Riley. He came in with so much fanfare to USC, and it has not worked out yet. This is a team that has been, without Caleb Williams, average. And even with Caleb Williams, they were average a year ago because their defense was so bad. Defense got better this year, offense got worse. This is a dude who needs to find some balance. He's never had it. He's had elite offenses and at best passable defenses at Oklahoma and at USC. He needs to find balance, but also massive buyout.
massive buyout, and USC's fired so many coaches recently, they're probably going to have to wait it out. So if you're a fan of any of these 5 guys, or not a fan and you want them to go, it's going to be pretty difficult. That's going to do it for this edition of the Top 5 and this edition of 365 Sports. We'll see you tomorrow.
We aren't done. Don't you ever let class out before the bell rings, Paul. That's not your role. Your role is to kick ass in the top 5.
It could very easily be. I mean,
I know you could.
You've
done that before whenever we've wanted to get the hell out of here. But by the way, we're back again tomorrow, 3 o'clock, with a result on who will play the winner of Texas and Ohio State. We'll know that tonight, sometime later on tonight. That game kicks off just here within the next hour, or I guess it is. 6:30 is what they say, but I don't know if it'll actually kick off right at 6:30. Emery Winters working up 365 Sports tonight. 10:30 tonight, every weeknight on the CW. Garrett Ross, thank you very much. Not as grumpy today. That's good that our conversation after school yesterday calmed you down just a little bit. Craig Smoak and Paul Catalina, we appreciate everyone watching whatever you do, whether it's on YouTube, Twitter, and also on Sikkim 365 app. Good luck to Penn State, Notre Dame. Hope you enjoy the game. Back at it again tomorrow. This is 365 Sports, and good night.